Hey, it is 7 o'clock, so we're going to call the town council meeting of March 10th, 2026 to order. Jennifer, will you take roll?
Councilmember Alberish?
Here.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Councilmember Gold? Councilmember Wall?
Here.
Mayor Domkowski?
Here, thank you. And we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Brown, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Dick. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. So persons wishing to address the council on non-agendized items that are within the jurisdiction of the town are invited to do so. Please note, however, that the council is not able, we have one speaker to go first, just in a moment. We're not able to undertake extended discussions or to act on non-agendized items. Such items can be referred to staff for appropriate action, which may include placement on a future agenda. This communication period is limited to 5 persons, 3 minutes each. Any additional persons will be heard at the end of regular business, and we're going to be sticking to that tonight. We have a lot of people here to talk about the housing element, so we're going to make sure that we respect everyone who is here for an agendized item. So we're going to take 5 speakers up front. And I am inviting our outside counsel, Rick Bolanos, to speak first. And I'm doing this because we've had some specific requests from the public for an update on the situation with Town Manager Ledbetter. Mr. Bolanos, welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Very good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. My name is Richard Bolanos. I'm a partner with the law firm of Lieber Cassidy Whitmore, and I serve as outside counsel for the town of Woodside. My office is advising the town on the whistleblower report that was released to the public on February 19th by town manager Jason Ledbetter. I wanted to provide a following summary of the events leading up to the publication of Mr. Ledbetter's report, and also provide a summary of the town's response to that report and the status of this matter. On January 13th of this year, following Mr. Ledbetter's performance review, the town council approved an amendment to Mr. Ledbetter's employment agreement by which he was given a $15,000 raise, increasing his annual salary to $315,000. On Tuesday, February 17th, Mr. Ledbetter made a demand for payment of approximately $400,000 in a lump sum into his bank account, no later than midnight, Sunday, February 22nd. He indicated that if the council did not authorize this payment, he would release a whistleblower report, grind all town business to a halt, and make every public meeting all about the alleged claims in the report. The council met in closed session to discuss this matter. In that closed session, Mr. Ledbetter repeated his demands and moved the payment deadline up to Friday, February 20th. The council rejected Mr. Ledbetter's demand, and although his employment agreement provides for no severance in the event of his resignation, the council offered to work with Mr. Ledbetter to reach terms for an amicable settlement in accordance with his employment agreement, while referring his complaints to the appropriate authorities for investigation. When advised of this, Mr. Ledbetter released his report to the public. As promised, the council has referred the report and Mr. Ledbetter's demands to the San Mateo County District Attorney with a request for investigation. The town staff and council are fully cooperating with the District Attorney's office. Mr. Ledbetter's claims of gender discrimination and harassment have been referred to an independent investigator, and that investigation is underway as well. Finally, I understand you will receive a public report tonight regarding the town's progress in meeting the milestones outlined in the town's certified housing element. Mr. Ledbetter is currently on paid administrative leave as the above referenced investigations are conducted. My office is now reviewing documents to respond to several Public Records Act requests for information, and responsive documents will be released as soon as that review is completed. As indicated, the town council and staff are cooperating with all requests from the district attorney's office and the independent investigator. While these inquiries are ongoing, the council has been instructed that no further public comments are to be made, and they are respecting that instruction in order to allow for a full, fair, and impartial inquiry to be undertaken. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bolanos. With that, next speaker. And we're going to take 5, and then the rest are going to go at the end. So,
Steve
yep.
Lubin, I'm distressed to hear the report you just heard. It indicates, further kind of non-public investigation into this. Let me go into my statement. Reading the allegations against council members contained in Jason Ledbetter's whistleblower letter, I am saddened and exasperated. The accusations are serious and not inconsistent with my personal experience. We must find a way to resolve this issue in order to restore the public trust. Right now, people are confused, upset, and trying to figure out the truth. I believe we need a truly independent investigation to clear this up. There should not be any appearance that council members are unduly influenced or interfering with this investigation. Please acknowledge that many people in town do not trust that town government is conducted in an open manner. There is a perception that issues are determined out of the public eye. Jason's letter reinforces this perception. An independent investigation and a really independent investigation is needed to determine the truth. Council members Dombrowski and Gold should consider recusing themselves from any discussions involving this investigation. An investigation should be selected in a public process, not by the town attorney or the council behind closed doors. Please agendize action on an independent investigation of these corruption claims at your next meeting. Let's work together to resolve this quickly.
Okay. And as a reminder, the complaint will be addressed in an appropriate process, and we're here to respect that.
Hi, Don Pugh,
Yep.
a 55-year resident of Woodside. We're all aware in reading the news about the political crap that's going on in Washington, D.C. and in Sacramento. But to realize this kind of crap is going on in Woodside is very distressing. Now, I got to know Jason, and I've worked with him. He's a great guy, very smart, very knowledgeable, very supportive of the things in the town, eager to help, and I think he truly loved this town. But I was very distressed to read his complaint, but it follows on to some concerns that I've had for a while. So what brought it on? Political Games Crap by Brian Dabowski and Chris Shaw. Those two people have been dealing with crap for a couple of years now. This political garbage has been going on. It was apparent with a plan to bulldoze the open space at Kenyatta Corners. Brian, Chris, you were playing political games, dishonesty, lies, deceit that supported the wealthy owner of the bakery, much to the detriment of the town citizens. Violation of the general plan, Brown Act violations, all goes back. We've been doing this for years. Now, the issue for Kenyatta Corners is still in litigation, but the town is going to lose because they had very shaky grounds to even start this whole thing from. So, Brian, you and Chris, why did you finagle to help a private business increase their profit? This is something I've yet to hopefully get out someday. Now, we need a real independent investigation to determine the allegations that Jason has made to make sure it's truthful. And I don't want anybody with a loyalty to Gene. I know you have got your own ideas, and hopefully it can be totally independent to investigate, because there's some real serious shit going on in this town, and I am very distressed to find it. Thank you for your minutes.
Thank you. And once again, we are here to respect the process, and we'll get into specific details when we can. We're going to take one from the Zoom room. Ms. New.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kristen New. I live in Grandview. I am echoing the urgings of others to conduct a thorough investigation into the allegations that were put forth. You know, everyone's innocent until proven guilty, but it was very distressing to me as a lifelong resident of Woodside to read this letter, and I still don't quite know what to make of it. But thank you very much for, your commitment to having an independent investigation. And I truly hope that that will be a very transparent and public process and the results be transparent and public as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. New. We are all committed to a thorough and complete process. Appreciate that. Yes, sir.
That's great to hear. I think the ask that others have voiced and we've talked about is somewhat putting your thumb on the scale to make sure that the public really feels like that is a process that they can trust in. I'm new to the town. I've gotten involved and everyone has very differing opinions on things I don't know about, things that predate me, and obviously a lot of the allegations are pretty serious. We're always going to have these like disagreements about like, should we do this? If we do that, then these people are angry. If we do that for them, then those people are angry. It's tough. So it's really important to have things in the open and restore the public trust. And this investigation should be indicative of that. So I would request that you guys put an agenda item on your next meeting that Brian and Paul recuse yourselves. We'll still have a quorum, and that you guys will elect a independent investigator for the claims specifically to Brian and Paul, not necessarily the independent investigation that were also made in the whistleblower complaint. So my request is to, in the next meeting, agendize hiring an independent investigation in addition to the concurrent independent investigation to restore public trust. So yeah, thank you. I know it's tough, but it's really important to restore public trust. Thank
We
you.
completely agree. Gene or Rick, do you want to weigh in on the process here a little bit? Gene, or no?
As Mr. Bolanos indicated, the claims have been referred to the district attorney's office. That is a completely independent investigation. And through the town's insurance carrier, an independent investigator has been assigned to investigate the other claims. No one at a staff level or at a council level is involved in that, other than if you're asked to be interviewed in that, we will comply with those requests.
Very good. Thank you. And we will recognize our fifth and final opening speaker tonight.
My name is Martin Walker. I'm a longtime resident of the town. Excuse me. After I saw a copy of the town's email relating to Jason's Ledbetter's complaint, I saw that there were several issues that relate specifically to town governance. And these issues feed the general perception that much town business is conducted behind the scenes. And this violates the Brown Act, of course. And it's my belief that the town should treat the Brown Act as a beacon for good governance and best practices for open meetings. And accordingly, the town should open an investigation into the possible Brown Act violations, including those raised in Jason's complaint and others. And the results of this investigation should include recommendations for best practices in maintaining and regarding open meetings. And I join, in order to avoid even the appearance of more bad governance, individuals directly implicated in these allegations should recuse themselves from the process. And in my view, specifically, Council members Dombrowski and Gold, as well as the town attorney. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to close opening communications and we'll be moving on to the consent calendar. All items on the consent are considered routine, will be approved by one roll call motion unless there's an item that any member of council would like to pull for further discussion. Is there any item on the consent agenda that any member of the public would like to have pulled for further discussion? Yes, Ms. Hanson. Number 4. Okay. Can we get a motion for items 1 through 3?
I move that we approve motions 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Councilmember Albrecht,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Gold,
Yes.
Councilmember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Domkowski.
Yes. Ms. Hanson, would you like to speak on item 4?
It's just a small but important comment. the hyperlinks in that document were not active. So I don't know how you all could have read the underlying attachments 1A, B, C, and D because they weren't available to the public, nor were, I also searched the website to try to read those as well. So the only thing I could find was table 1 and the executive summary. So I would urge you not to approve this item unless the public can read the background information. Thank you.
I believe I know the solution to that. So when I clicked on it, I found the same issue, and then I looked at the actual link, and it included one of the brackets at the end, I think, for each of them. And so if you delete that and then hit enter, it would go through.
If we can't find it, you shouldn't approve it. But thank you for the technical support.
Sure.
Fair enough. We can reissue that. And
Yes, we will move this to the next meeting.
very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving right along. Oh, we're not going to approve. We're gonna push that to the next. Do we need to approve pushing it to the next? Yeah. No.
We'll take.
Okay, very good. Next up is the acceptance of the 2025 audited financial statements, and I'm handing this off to you, Melissa, although I know we have Mr. Eichler here as the chair of the committee.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Domkowski. It is recommended that the town council accept into public record the audited basic financial statements, GAN Proposition 111 Appropriation Limit Review, Measure A and Measure W Special Revenue Fund Report, the Memorandum on Internal Control and Required Communications, and the town manager's report on the town's financial self-assessment for 2024-25. And Dave Eichler, chair of the audit committee, is here tonight to give a brief presentation from the audit committee.
Welcome, Mr. Eichler.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is Dave Eichler. I am chairman of the town's audit committee. We have two other members on that committee, Dave Burrow, who couldn't be here tonight, and Ron Karpovich, who's here, I believe. There he is. Thank you. Each of the town council members should have received a copy of the fiscal year 2025 financial statements, which includes the independent auditor's report, footnotes which provide additional disclosure and information on the town's accounting policies, and also details about their investments and the pension plan and so forth. Also supplemental information, as well as the management discussion analysis of the financial results for fiscal year 25, as well as the financial condition for the town as of June 30th, 2025. The audit was successfully completed by our outside independent auditing firm, Mays and Associates, with the assistance of town staff. Our committee thoroughly reviewed and discussed the financial report with the town staff as well as with the auditors. And also we had detailed discussions with the auditors about the audit itself. So the auditor's report, which is on page 1 of the financial document that you have, indicates a clean, unqualified opinion, which in the opinion of the auditors indicates that the financial statements present fairly in all material aspects. In their opinion, the financial results for the town, as well as the financial condition for the period ending June 30th, 2025. The auditors also reported to our committee that there were no material adjustments to any of the numbers that they audited. There were no material weaknesses noted, and there were no disagreements with management. And there was no indication of any fraud. So in summary, the committee approves the fiscal 2025 financial statements and recommends the town council do the same. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
I have a comment, not a question. I'll defer.
I ask you the same question every year, which is about our pension liabilities.
I'm prepared.
Thank you. We aren't alone, but we've also taken some wonderful steps to address the issue. But can
Sure.
you speak a little bit about our status? It's one of those sort of things that are off balance sheet a little bit, what our liabilities are versus our asset coverage.
There's disclosure in footnote 2 on this particular subject under our cash and investments. There's also a comment or summary in the executive summary, which appears on page 6. So on page 6, there's a bullet point that says that the town's pension liability is 74.4% funded as of the end of fiscal 25. As you know, the town has set aside money, which is now increased by 12.6% this past fiscal year, to $3 million. This money was set aside to potentially pre-fund any future pension obligations. So if that money were used to pay down the unfunded pension liability, which was $5.2 million at the end of June 30th, 2025, the pension would be funded at a level of 88%. CalPERS, my understanding, typically gauges pension contributions from various towns and cities at about a 70% level. So even at 74%, we're actually doing better than what CalPERS normally suggests the towns do. But if the town wanted to pay down that pension liability with that $3 million, which was set aside outside of CalPERS assets, that pension liability would be 88% funded. Does that answer your question?
It does perfectly. Thank you. You had a comment. Mayor
Do you
Protem.
want to comment first?
Well, why don't we?
Okay. So first, I'm one of the representatives from the town council to the audit committee, and I just wanted to thank Ron, Dave Eichler, Dave Burrow, who's not here tonight, for their work. I attended every
And also
single-
the staff for the town, yeah.
Well, I was going to get to Cindy and the rest of it, but I attended every single meeting, probably close to a dozen hours or so spent on that. But I just wanted to point out, if you, for those in the audience and on Zoom, the org chart is on page 13 of tonight's packet, and it shows the audit committee is a very special committee of the town. It's unlike any of the other advisory or volunteer committees. We don't govern them. The town council doesn't, and we want that independent audit function. And they actually choose their own members, and one of them retires or resigns, they pick their own. We don't have anything to do with it. And there's a reason for that. We do want the independence. A lot has been made of the word independence tonight already, but we feel very strongly about that as far as the fiscal management goes here. And I will tell you that given the financial expertise of the two Daves and Ron, they are all very experienced financial CFOs, CEOs in their companies in the private sector. You could not buy the expertise that those three gentlemen bring to the audit committee in that review, which is extraordinarily intensive from Mays Associates, our auditing firm, and from the staff, including Cindy and her staff, who perform the audit and keep us in good shape. So I did want to thank everybody for their service on that. It's not fun, and it's very tedious, and we do appreciate it. I did want to make one final comment because the mayor he asked about the pension liability, and Dave Eichler made mention that we're at 74%, which is of funding, which is already about 5 or 10% over the statewide average of any city or town or any other municipality, county, or state. Often they're in the 50% range. 70 is kind of like
They
a pretty
target
high end.
70%, but
And we're at 74.
Yeah.
And the thing that I wanted to point out was the town council, and I think it may have been in my first year on this second go round, I'm not sure, it predated me. The town had extra cash, extra money, extra funds, and we were thinking about what to do with it. And I think it was the mayor, I'm not sure, who's in financial management, had recommended that we take a fairly large slug of money and put it aside into a supplemental fund. $3 million and invested it. That doesn't count. I have to sort of translate the financial speak of esteemed neighbor at the microphone. But that $3 million that the council voted on and put aside to fund pension liabilities is not counted in that 74%. I know you explained that before. And with that, we're in the 88%,
88%.
almost 90%, almost unheard of in any governance anywhere, maybe in the country. And that was due to the financial management, which predated me. But going through the audit committee and attending those meetings, it's nice to see that there's an extra slug of money in there dedicated solely to the pensions of our staff and employees that doesn't even count in the financial statements. We know it's there and it can only be used for that purpose.
Yeah, it's under our control. It's not under CalPERS control.
It's
So
under, that's exactly right. And so I just wanted to point that out, that financially we are in superb shape and even better shape than I think the financial audit reveals, simply because there is other funds there, significant funds that actually bring us to a standard that's almost unheard of. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you for that and thank you guys for your great service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being on the town council as well. One other comment, for townspeople, if you're interested in looking at these financial statements, after these are approved by the town council, they do get put on the town's website. So historically, you can go back 15, 20 years and they're out there still. So it's under the financial section on the website if you're interested in learning more about the town's finances and where the money is being spent. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good segue. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on the audit? Seeing none, then on behalf of all of us, please accept our deepest gratitude for your meticulous review of the statements and the confidence that it inspires in our financials. We really appreciate the work that you do. And we are just accepting this report tonight, so there is no vote. We are just accepting and moving forward. Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business item B, the annual progress report for the housing element. And this is an informational report, and I'm handing it off to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Mayor Domkowski. It is recommended that the town council accept the informational annual progress report for the housing element for 2025 and direct staff to transmit by April 1st the report to the State Department of Housing and Community Development and Office of Planning and Research as required by Government Code Section 65400. The report, as required, contains information on the town's progress toward meeting its regional housing needs, or RHNA allocation. During 2025, the town issued permits for 23 accessory dwelling units and 11 permits for single-family dwellings. 2 of the issued permits for new ADUs were voided or put on hold, so 21 permits for ADUs have been included in the 2025 APR. Of the 21 ADUs permitted in 2025, 7 ADUs are considered very low-income units, 6 as low-income units, 6 as moderate-income units, and 2 as above-moderate-income units. All 11 single-family dwellings permitted in 2025 count as above moderate income units. The town's certified housing element also designates 3 properties in town for multifamily projects. First, a 1-acre privately owned site at 773 Kenyatta, slated to produce a total of 16 moderate income units. The property owner is currently in the process of subdividing the larger 9 acres of land into the 1-acre multifamily site and the remaining area for single-family residential site. Second, a 1 1/2 acre town-owned site on Raymundo, slated to produce a total of 17 units, 12 low and very low income units, and 5 moderate income units. Third, a 1-acre town-owned site on High Road, slated to produce a total of 16 units, 11 low and very low income units, and 5 moderate income units. For the 2 town-owned sites, by September of 2026, the town is required to issue a notice of availability pursuant to the Surplus Lands Act to solicit proposals for development of these 2 sites. To meet this timeline, the town, in September 2025, issued a request for proposals seeking a consultant to prepare a town master sanitary sewer study to analyze existing and needed capacity to serve current residences and anticipated development, including 773 Kenyatta and the town-owned sites. On November 18th, 2025, the Town Council approved a contract with Fryer and Loretta to analyze both the existing sewer infrastructure and contractual capacity for the Town Center Sewer Assessment District, Redwood Creek Sewer Assessment District, and Fair Oaks Sewer Maintenance District. The study is not yet complete. We anticipate the study will be completed later this spring. As the study is being conducted by Fryer and Loretta, staff has also been working with Jerry Remiza from the law firm of Burke, Williams, and Sorensen to assist in the development of a timeline and process for the Town Council to consider as it accepts public input and directs how staff should proceed to solicit proposals for development of the two town-owned sites. I am now turning the presentation over to Mr. Remiza so that he can outline in general terms next steps once the sewer study is complete.
Good evening,
Welcome. Good
council
evening.
members. Can you hear me all right?
We can, the closer it gets for the folks on the Zoom, the better. But
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you. Again, my name is Jerry Remiza. I'm a real estate lawyer with the firm of Burke, Williams, and Sorensen. And back in June of this past year, June of 2025, town attorney Gene Savory reached out to me with a request for assistance to provide some advice on the proper process that the town ought to go through with respect to the two sites that were mentioned, Raymundo and High Road, and how to comply with the State Surplus Land Act. So since June, I've been working on that project. We've had a number of Zoom calls and phone calls to discuss process and review alternatives. And if you'd like, I can give a little bit of background, a quick summary of the process that the town will need to follow, and broadly speaking, the two alternatives. So the statute that we're operating under and that the town will need to comply with is the State Surplus Land Act. It's in the government code. It's been in existence for a long time, since I think 1968, and for the first 50 years, it wasn't that impactful. But several years ago, back in 2019, the state legislature made substantial amendments to the Surplus Land Act, and they were targeted at the statewide housing shortage, affordable housing issues. It was part of that effort to address the need for affordable housing. And the result has been really any time a city, a town, a county is entering into long-term leases or looking to sell property to a third party, you have to comply with the State Surplus Land Act. And broadly speaking, there are two ways to do that. The State Surplus Land Act defines a series of exemptions that are, and so property can be declared exempt surplus land if you fit in one of those boxes, one of those exemptions, or property can be declared as surplus land, and then there's a separate statutory process to go through. So that's really the first step in the process, deciding whether it's in the town's interest to go down the exempt surplus land road or the surplus land route. And in general, well, let me stop there for a moment. That decision of whether to go surplus land or exempt surplus land, that is a public process. The town council would have to adopt a resolution making findings to support an exemption determination, or concluding that it desires to follow the surplus land process. So there is a public step, a notice public meeting, resolution has to be adopted, and that will, I anticipate, a decision will be presented to the council or recommendation in the coming months. Broadly speaking, the town has a bit more local control and autonomy if you can proceed under an exempt surplus land determination as opposed to a surplus land determination. So generally speaking, we recommend that communities follow the exempt surplus land route, provided the proper findings and determinations can be made. And we're pretty close to concluding that they can certainly be made with respect to Raymundo, High Road is a little bit of an open question, and I'll get into that in a moment. Under the applicable exemption that the town may be able to take advantage of, and by declaring the properties, one or both properties exempt surplus land, is in, for those interested in reviewing the specific exception, it's in Government Code Section 54221 F1A, and that cross-references another Government Code affordable housing provision, which is in Section 37364. So that particular exemption, it specifies 3 criteria that you need to meet in order to follow it. One of the criteria is that at least 80% of the land area of the property in question has to be developed for housing. At least 40% of the total housing units have to be what I'll just describe as pretty deeply affordable, very low, or at the lower end of low income, plus a number of very low income units as well. The third requirement is an easy one to meet. There has to be a recorded regulatory agreement for at least 30 years. So the one here that's a little bit in question with respect to the High Road site is that 80% lot coverage requirement. High Road, it's a smaller parcel. It's a little bit, the configuration is a little bit odd. It's not a rectilinear parcel, and there's also a PG&E easement. So staff has been doing some due diligence to see whether it's realistic the 80% coverage requirement can be met. If it can be, I anticipate staff's recommendation to you will be to declare it exempt surplus land. And if that happens, the next step in the process is the town could issue an RFQ, a request for qualifications, or a request for proposals. And then basically you're in the driver's seat to decide to send that out to the world of affordable housing developers. And then you're in a position to select one with a demonstrated track record of success, who builds high quality projects you think can meet the town's objectives. And that's why I say you have a little bit more autonomy under the exempt process. The alternative, I'll just briefly mention the alternative, which is not pursuing an exemption and just declaring the property to be surplus. If you go that route, it's a little bit of a slower process, and it's one that you have a little less control over. It starts with a preparation of a notice of availability. That notice gets emailed or sent via certified mail to a list of 300 plus housing sponsors and other developers statewide who've expressed an interest in learning about the availability of surplus lands. That notice goes out for 60 days, so you have 60 days to receive responses from essentially the whole world of potential developers who might be interested in doing affordable housing. At that point, you'll evaluate the responses. You have some discretion to select, but the preference really goes to the responder who's proposing the highest number of units and the deepest affordability. And regardless of whether or not they have a real demonstrated track record or access to financing, et cetera, you end up having to go through a good faith negotiation process of at least 90 days. The statute doesn't dictate a particular result. You do not have to sell the property to any developer who responds, or the developer who responds with, or that you speak with first. But it does specify a process. So you have to build a record, you negotiated in good faith, you didn't get to a deal. And then, you know, if you received other responses, you'd go through that process. It doesn't necessarily have to be entirely serial. You can have concurrent negotiations, but you'd have to go through that process. You'd have less control over who you might want to work with as a developer for these two sites. If you're ultimately successful through a Surplus Land Act process, you would still enter into a disposition and development agreement of some sort, basically a purchase and sale agreement that has some affirmative development obligations. And that developer, if they performed under the agreement, they'd close escrow, buy the site, and build the project. If you can't find a developer through that process, or if no one responds with interest for one reason or another, you have the ability to sell the properties to others who are not interested in developing affordable housing, but you'd be required to record a covenant against the property that specifies that if housing is ever developed, at least 15% of those units will have to be low income units. In this case, I think it would be a little bit hard to do that since the housing element has identified these sites for housing purposes. They're designated for housing uses under the general plan. So I don't really view at this point non-housing development alternatives as being practical, but that's what the Surplus Land Act specifies. So to just review next steps, there's some due diligence going on. There's a sewer capacity study being done, which has already been mentioned tonight. That'll be important information for prospective developers. We're also trying to be as certain as we can about that 80% lot coverage requirement for High Road, because one desire is to make sure we do it right the first time. We don't want to go down the exempt road and then find out we can't meet it and have to backpedal and restart the process. We've got noticed public meetings ahead and adoption of resolutions where you would choose the path that's best for the town, exempt surplus land or surplus land. And I think that's the last information I wanted to share. If you have any questions about the process, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Ramiza. Any questions?
I have a bunch.
Yeah, you want to go for it?
First, Jerry, thank you for that. I wish we had heard that before we got into the housing element a couple of years ago, because a lot of the questions from the concerned citizens were exactly the things you were talking about. I'm assuming staff and council knew a lot of these things, but I can only speak for myself. I didn't, and I'm assuming a lot of the folks in the public didn't know either. So I have a few questions to ask you about some of the permutations. So you said there's two ways to go with Raimundo and High Road, which is what we're talking about here. It could be exempt or not exempt, and you gave the reasons for each. So something just triggered in my mind here when you were talking at the very end. So let's say we determine it is 80% on High Road. That's the one that's the most problematic, as I think we've pointed out in spades here over the past 3 years. But let's say we determine it is 80%, we make it exempt, and then when the developer comes in, they're only going to cover 50%.
Yeah, that would be a problem, because I think if you issued an RFP seeking a developer, we would make very clear that this RFP is being issued pursuant to an exemption determination, and there are 3 critical components of that exemption determination. So the town would be seeking a developer who can undertake a project that complies with the exemption.
Got it. So, thank you for the clarification. So when we put this out for a request for a proposal, if it's exempt, we have a lot more control, as you said. We can make sure that they're bona fide developers and they have financial wherewithal and a track record. All pretty good things, of course. There are 3 possibilities in those responses. One, we could get no responses. And then you said we would be eligible to sell it to somebody else for other reasons, provided 15% of any development that's there would be for affordable housing. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, that's mostly right, but there's another step in the process. So if you declared it exempt surplus land, thought you would be successful by pursuing the exemption, and if it turned out that was infeasible, you get no responses, then the next option would be, well, that didn't work. We're going to declare it surplus. And so now you're going through that surplus land process, notice to the world of affordable housing developers, 300+ entities. Wait the 60 days, see who you hear from, start negotiations, negotiate for at least 90 days, hopefully end up with a successful outcome through that process. And if you don't, then okay, at that point, I suppose you've demonstrated it's not particularly feasible to do housing because you've attempted to find a housing developer and let's just say no one is interested. Then it would be record the covenant, notify the, there's a state agency, State Department of Housing and Community Development, you're probably familiar with because you're interfacing with them to get housing elements approved, but they are the enforcement body and the overseer of this whole Surplus Land Act process. So there are a series of points at which you notify HCD of what you're doing, what your progress is, whether you've been successful. Did you negotiate with someone and not have a successful outcome? So that all of that gets reported to HCD.
So my point is you're leading right down the pathway that I'm saying. And I think that it may be a likely outcome. Nobody's interested or they're not interested at the level that we're specifying in there. We have no takers. We can't find anybody. We say it's surplus property. What happens to our RENA number? What happens? I mean, we're telling HCD we're not going to make 394.
Yeah, I'm going to refer that question to the town attorney because there would be really what I've described is simply this is the world under the State Surplus Land Act. So there could be other implications if you are unsuccessful through that process. That doesn't mean you're home free. Maybe you're home free under the Surplus Land Act.
Or we find something else, but I guess I'll let Jean respond to that. The town attorney to respond to that.
So as Jerry's indicated, your housing element designates those sites and indicates they will be developed at that level of affordability. If that can't happen, you will need to start looking for other sites or other ways to incentivize folks to come in and produce those housing numbers for you. During that time period, we would try our best to work with HCD so that they don't levy fines or decertify the housing element because when you're decertified, then you find yourself in a very vulnerable position for builders remedy projects and additional fines from the state. And that is not a place anybody wants to be.
Okay, got it. So before I go to the other two possibilities, Jerry, we talked about one, if there is no response or there are insufficient responses, what we do in that event. But before I go down the other two possibilities, which is somebody responds perfectly or somebody responds with a kind of a medium warm result, I did want to ask you a question because you brought this up. You said we would have to put a covenant against the property in the first pathway, dedicating 15% to affordable housing. Can you describe what a covenant is and how you reverse it?
Well, you wouldn't be able to reverse it. So it would be a covenant that, and really what it contemplates is, in most instances under the Surplus Land Act, if you offer the site to affordable housing developers and they take a pass, and then let's say you sell for a commercial development, that's really the purpose of the covenant. The covenant is this site has just been sold to a third party for a non-affordable housing use. And if it turns out that third party decides, no, I'm not going to do my commercial project after all, I want to do a luxury townhome project. Well, 15% of the residential units that are developed will have to be low income.
So essentially a covenant is a restrictive deed. It's filed with this clerk, right? With the county clerk.
Correct. It runs with the land.
Runs with the land in perpetuity, as I understand.
Binding on successors. That particular covenant, that fallback 15%, if you're unsuccessful, I don't believe it has an expiration date.
But there's no mechanism to have it undone except by agreement of the parties.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you. I'm just appreciate that clarification because that came up 3 years ago. And I appreciate you're the town's expert in this area, and I was very glad to hear that. So let's talk about the other two avenues that you could go down. it's real easy if a developer comes back and says, hey, 16 units at High Road, 80% coverage, we got this. Here's the proposal. We'll get to that in a second. But suppose somebody comes back and says, this is a really awkward parcel. I can put on 4 townhomes. That's the most I could do. What do we do? If maybe that's the best proposal we get.
Well, for purposes of there may be other implications under the housing element, but for purposes of the Surplus Land Act, the requirement is 40% of.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about affordability. Suppose they meet all of that, but they can't put 16. They could put 10 or 8 or 6.
They can meet the 80% lot coverage.
Yeah.
If 40% of those are affordable to households earning 75% of the maximum income of lower income households, that's the lower end of maximum, and at least half of those are affordable to very low income households, then they would have met the requirement under the Surplus Land Act.
So the 16 units on High Road, the 17 units on Raimundo are not necessarily cast in stone if the developers, if the requests for proposals come back at less than those numbers.
Not cast in stone under the Surplus Land Act, but could be other implications under the housing element.
Got it. Thank you. Very helpful. Okay, so now let's talk about the last one. Sorry for taking all the time, but I think these questions, I assume, are on people's minds, or they should be. So let's talk for a second about, we put out a request for quote for Raimundo, and we put one out for High Road, and they come back perfectly. It's a qualified developer and everything else. So now comes the question, how do we sell the property? You said something about 30-year minimums and things like that. I think I heard that number. But do we have to sell the parcel outright? Could we lease it for 99 years? Could we sell it for $1? Does it have to be market rate? I mean, these are going to be condominiums. These are supposed to be owner occupied. And I have a follow-up question to that one too, but I'll let you handle that first.
Well, you could sell it for $1. Presumably you would only do that if there was a demonstrated feasibility gap in the financing and it was required to make the project feasible. There's no obligation to write down the value of the land to make the project feasible. So sometimes when local agencies are selling surplus property, one of the requirements they put in is the expectation is we're selling it for full fair market value. So don't expect a discount. You're not required to do that, and similarly, you're not required to write down the value of the land. I mentioned that 30-year regulatory agreement. That's just another example. Recorded covenant runs with the land, binding on both the initial developer, grantee of the property, as well as successors and assigns.
Okay. So we have somebody who comes back and they're going to develop this property. Everything looks fine. They may come back and say, we need you to sell us the property for $1 to make the finances work for us, because the cost of developing these properties is going to be expensive. One of them has a $2.5 million sewer that's required. I mean, I can see the cost really running up here, and they may need a cheap price on the land to make this work. But the town can determine that we don't want to sell it for less than fair market value. Is that what you just said?
Correct. You're not obligated to
sell it for
write
$1.
down the value of the land.
Got it. Thank you. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, during these deliberations that took place about 3 years ago, this was a pretty contentious, the room had actually more people in it than it has tonight. One of the things that came up was that this is my word, to appease the public, we told them that there would be several more opportunities down the road to oppose the development of these parcels. It's certainly their right. We have a First Amendment right to speak against the development. But one of the things that kind of came up in opposing them was the council, and I believe Councilmember Wall was the mayor at the time. I'm not positive. She can correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of the neighbors came forward and said, we would like to have a neighborhood committee to meet. And it was going to be, I think it was at the time, it was going to be the mayor and I think the planning director and the town manager and a few members of those areas. Ramundo Road area and High Road would be two separate neighborhood committees to discuss the very issues that you and I are talking about right now. Is this going to be sold for how much? You know, a lot of the issues not covered in the environmental reviews and the site reviews that we did at that time, but the other issues that are there, like where are people going to park and how are we going to, the 80% coverage you were just talking about, are we going to sell the land? Are we going to lease it, for how much? At the time, I think the council came out and they said they wanted them to be owner occupied, that is condominiums. And importantly, at least for me, was how is the appreciated value, if these are condominiums, going to vest with the purchasers of these properties over time? And I recall giving this very example. Suppose some teacher from Woodside Elementary School buys one of these condominiums for below market rate. I'll throw out a number, $500,000. The real market is $1.5 million for that same unit. So he or she buys it for $500,000, and a year later wants to sell it at fair market value, $1.5 million. Does that $1 million gain go to the teacher? Does it go to the town, or is it going to vest over time? And I actually brought this up, and I thought, I think I wrote an email, if I'm not mistaken, to then town manager Kevin Bryant, that maybe vesting it, I'm very familiar with stock options, maybe vesting it over 20 years where they get 1/20th of every year over 20 years. And at the end, if they live there 20 years, they should get the full appreciated value. But if they sell it after a year, maybe they keep 1/20th of it and the town keeps 19/20ths of it. Something like that. Is that the kind of paradigm that people use in owner-occupied reselling a below market value condominium?
Yeah, there are different models, but the important thing is that the unit has to remain affordable for the required time period to the next purchaser, right? So it's not going to be possible. You have to find a solution to that. So oftentimes what happens is that the local jurisdiction, the town in this case, might buy the unit back from the initial purchaser and then be a conduit to get that unit to the next homeowner.
At some prior agreed price,
at
some formula.
Which likely will be a higher price than what the initial purchaser, your hypothetical teacher in the example, paid, because what's has been the trend over time is area median incomes increase, therefore the income levels for very low income and low income go up, and then that drives the formula for what's known as the affordable housing cost, which is basically the purchase price. What purchase price is affordable to that particular income level? So it tends to go up over time.
Maybe tracking inflation, but not housing price.
Right.
So, Jerry, thank you. This is exactly what the neighbor committee was supposed to address. We didn't know at the time. And I think it was that very issue that we were saying, if this actually runs with the property, the affordability for ever, essentially, how do we capture that? And that was actually part of what the neighborhood committee was supposed to be discussing to work that out in advance of the RFPs.
Can I just address
Yes, of
that?
course.
So the baseline information we need in order to have a meaningful discussion with the public and with you is the sewer study. And so staff heard very clearly about public input and subcommittees, however the council wanted to direct those be composed. That has not been lost. We just don't have the sewer capacity study analyzed yet. And once that happens, then that process can begin.
I agree with you there. And I didn't want to put that aside. The sewer study to me is a binary gating study about what we could do. But all of the issues we're talking about now flow, no pun intended, from the sewer study.
With you. I
All right.
agree.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Wall, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Just building off of some of the comments that Paul made. I do recall, just in the spirit of transparency, Paul, I do recall the council being very focused on neighborhood input, which actually my question for you, Jerry, when I get there is I'm curious to hear kind of you describe in more detail how residents will be able to offer their input going forward. I don't have the same recollection that you do, Paul, around, you know, obligating, making any binding obligations around forming a neighborhood committee. That doesn't, I don't think really matter. I think the spirit is there that we absolutely want to solicit as much resident input as possible. So Jerry, do you think, and apologies if you mentioned this in your report already, but can you kind of just walk us through, now that you have presented to the council sort of the process, to determine whether the sites are state surplus land or exempt surplus land? What are the different moments where the council will be able to hear resident input, or what are the opportunities for residents to offer their input?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. The first, I think, opportunity will be when a determination is made. Does the town council want to declare each of the sites exempt surplus land or surplus land? So if it happens for both sites at the same meeting, that'll be a key point in time at which the community can weigh in about the wisdom of, or not, of pursuing one of those two paths. And then, of course, the next major opportunity is if a developer is selected through whichever process you follow, and you want to choose a developer for a particular site or one developer for both sites, to whether it's to ground lease or to purchase the site, that agreement with that developer will be presented at a council meeting. There'll be a staff report. Presumably there's an analysis of the financial terms of the deal, some analysis of the viability of the development project, why staff in its team of advisors believe the development project is viable and likely to be successful. And then that agreement would have remedies, typically including rights of reverter or some option to get the property back. If you choose a developer, you think they're terrific and they have a great plan, but they're unable to perform. So usually we try to mitigate the risk of failure by delaying the conveyance until the developer has all their ducks in a row. They've got their financing lined up. They're ready to pull a building permit, but there's always an outside chance that something goes south after that. And so we'd even build into the agreement, remedies at that point. But those are the two key opportunities for the public to weigh in on the process.
Can I just add one more? And I think this is, Jerry doesn't have the benefit of having sat through all the previous meetings. You've also instructed that before any RFP gets issued, you want the public to be involved in looking at what that RFP would contain. Now, the only thing so far is what's shown in your housing element, the number of units. But there's a lot more detail that you would want to be issuing when you go out looking for someone to partner with to develop those sites. And that's when the public input will be extremely important, so that you can weigh all of their concerns and requests and make sure that you can accommodate as many of those as possible.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah. Councilmember Abarish.
Thank you. So thank you for walking us through the process of, and all the different options. And I'm guessing that you have some idea, because right now it just sounds like there's all these different options, and it's, we could end up in any one of them, including, private sale. So I was hoping to walk through them and just getting from your experience, what's the most likely outcome here? And I won't hold you, I don't expect you to, predict exactly what's going to happen, but do you have any thoughts on the likelihood that we'll be able to find a solution to get 80% development for housing on that property?
On High Road, I really don't, because I think one of the things we need, and it's possible Sage may have done some of this work, but I would want to see a plotted easement map of that PG&E easement. I'm going to assume you're not going to be able to put housing in the PG&E easement area. So one of the key considerations would be plot that easement and calculate what percentage of the site is encumbered by that. And we know that's off limits. And is it more or less than 20% of the site? And then hopefully it's considerably less than 20%, because for any development, you're not going to do very likely a zero lot line development and put a building and just fill every square inch of the site.
Great, thank you. And then, so if we go down the other path, or sorry, if we are able to get the 80% there, do you have experience on what the likelihood is that we would actually be able to, like, if we put it out to a bid or to, a request, remember the term you used, request for qualifications,
Yeah,
proposals?
qualifications or proposals. Or perhaps a hybrid between the two.
What's your experience on, do you get many? Do you get some? Is it just kind of a crapshoot?
It's a little bit of a crapshoot. They're one of the things that can make sites more or less attractive to the affordable housing developer community is proximity to things like transit services, grocery stores. And there's a complex scoring formula for allocation of tax credits, which are often used for affordable housing projects. That improves it's a low cost of financing, lower cost than private market. So it makes projects that will generate limited rental income because they're affordable more financially viable if you can tap into those sorts of funding. Also, state bond monies sometimes are available. So I don't know how this particular site would score. There are people who could tell us that. If there is a possibility of doing a tax credit project, there's a good chance that your prospective developers may propose an even more affordable project, or a project that has more affordable units than the 40% I mentioned, because they may need to do that to tap into those other financing sources. So it's a little bit of a counterintuitive results. You would think more affordable units would make it less financially viable, but that's not always the case if it enables you to tap into good sources of low-cost financing.
Thank you. And then if we have to go the other route, the surplus route, do you have any, when you send it out to the 300 plus developers, do you have any experience on how frequently you come up short and have to find a private buyer? Or
I would think you would get responses if you were to send it out to 300 groups. I don't know whether those responses would come from the group of well-regarded affordable housing developers that you see up and down the peninsula that have a track record of success. I mean, hopefully you would receive responses from one or more of those if you went the Surplus Land Act, the surplus land process. But as I mentioned earlier, I think you have a little bit more control under the exempt surplus land process.
Great, thank you.
You good? Yeah, a lot of ground's been covered. Maybe one thing that we didn't fully consider is the first step to all this is the sewer capacity that we have to support density in that area. And we wound up putting a fair bit of our required density in basically 1 square mile on the north side of town that's serviced by this sewer. So I guess the question is, and we'll know more, I think this study comes out in about a month, right? That's when we got about a month. What happens if there's limited capacity or not enough capacity? We have a couple of competing projects in that area. Who gets the capacity? Is it first come, first serve? What happens if we are limited or we are capacity constrained on sewer, because we need that to support density? Yeah, tough one, but.
Well, if the study comes back and shows you have a limited capacity, then we will be back here in front of you, in front of the public, daylighting that and asking how you wish to proceed. Whether that is to try and figure out how to get additional capacity or not. What the cost of that would be, how that could be accomplished. You don't run your own sewer plant here. You have lines that run through town, but that's transferred elsewhere, and we don't process that. So it's a complicated issue, and that's why you indicated that we needed the master sewer study to indicate what the capacity is, not only for new development, but for existing homes, those homes that may end up with a failed septic system. You really wanted to understand what is the capacity for the town as it currently is developed and for future development.
Right. And then the next part of that is, say, one project gets, the green light before another, they are the first ones, I guess, to gobble up whatever's left of the capacity. Is that what winds up happening? Then another project might end up not having any ability to connect to sewer and therefore becomes a dead project. And now we have a different issue, I guess, on our hands. We're running around trying to find new units somewhere else.
That's right. But since these are both town-owned sites, you control when and if you issue the RFPs and when and if you approve a developer and how you move forward. So you have more control over these two sites and than you do if a private developer comes forward and wants to put up a project.
Okay. In building out sewer in a constrained cost environment for the town, how would we fund that even if we could get the sewer capacity from the provider?
Well, that's a question you'd have to address after you get a full analysis. I know often infrastructure projects are bond measures that need to go to the voters, and if it's approved by the voters, then there's funding for those infrastructure improvements. If it's not approved, there's no funding for them.
Okay, thank you. Yes, another question.
One quick follow-up, I promise. So Jerry, your expertise sounds like is in surplus property, whether it's exempt or not exempt, land use, I guess, in general.
Yeah, I'd say public-private partnership development projects. So usually involving a public agency and a developer working to develop some challenging site or another.
Very timely, because I suspect a lot of the people here are going to talk about some surplus property. So I do have a question for you just to kind of tee that up. And that is there any obligation of the town to acquire surplus lands if we don't have any to build properties on? I mean, we're down to really our last few here with High Road and Raimundo. We have a few others, but they're far more awkward than High Road. Is there any obligation for us to acquire lands affirmatively to go seek them out?
Yeah, that is something that is completely not addressed by the Surplus Land Act. It's really more, I think, relevant to the housing element question and how you meet your RENA numbers. And
so it's a political decision. It's not a policy decision. I mean, it's not a requirement.
It's not a surplus. The Surplus Land Act just deals with disposition of properties that a local agency owns and concludes it no longer needs for its own use.
I assume that would apply to the state disposing of its surplus lands too.
State agency, the counties, special districts, the state, I don't know that state agencies are subject to that act. They may have some independent requirements.
Thank you.
Okay, we know we got a lot of people here that want to comment on the item, so we welcome your input, and will be captured for the record as we move forward through what I suspect is going to be a series of public meetings on this. But public comment is open. Would anybody like to kick us off? Ms. Paletti.
Hi, I'm Sue Paletti, a 37-year resident of Raimundo. And now we've identified 2 town sites. Now we must evaluate whether these sites can actually be developed once physical constraints and life safety regulations are examined more closely. At a meeting attended by several of us, the town attorney explained that there was no fire code violation for the Raimundo site because there's no project. I understand that interpretation. Typically, the fire code is enforced at the building site, the building permit stage. Simply listing a site in the housing element does not itself create a fire code violation, but the absence of a violation today does not mean the site is feasible. Feasibility is the real question. Runnymede Raimundo is a narrow, single-access dead-end road that already serves more than 30 dwellings. The campfires is an example of why the fire code access requirements exist. There was gridlock and 85 people lost their lives, some of them burned to death sitting in their cars. Fire Code D107 mandates that once a road serves more than 30 dwelling units, any additional development requires a separate secondary fire apparatus access road, so residents and firefighters are not forced to rely on a single road. Given the physical constraints of the Raimondo site, it is not clear how a compliant secondary access road could be provided. The housing element identifies sites that are available for potential housing, but it does not guarantee that every site can be ultimately built. When a site later proves unable to comply with life safety laws, such as the fire code, towns commonly replace that site with another location that can physically or realistically meet both the housing and life safety requirements. For that reason, before issuing an RFP for the Raimondo parcel, I've asked us in a separate letter dated March 6th to provide residents with a written determination for the town council, as well as the fire code official, regarding whether the site is safe, will not worsen life safety, and can physically comply with fire code sections D107 and D103. If a compliant secondary fire apparatus access road cannot be provided, the site is infeasible for additional development. Proceeding with an RFP for a site that is not buildable would mislead prospective developers and expend public resources on a proposal that cannot meet life safety standards or life safety mandates for that matter, particularly in a very high fire hazard severity zone. We must ensure that the sites are physically capable of meeting the fire code in order to protect the town, potential developers, firefighters, existing and future residents. If further analysis confirms that the Raimondo site parcel cannot meet D107, the town can evaluate alternative sites while still meeting its housing obligations. Addressing this question now would
It's 3
allow
minutes.
Addressing this question now would allow the town to refine its housing site inventory based on feasibility without undermining its commitment to state housing goals. Housing policy should
Stu,
never.
we gotta cut you at 3.
1 second, I'm almost finished. Housing policy should never ask us to choose between building homes and protecting lives.
Okay.
Before issuing an RFP, the town should first answer a simple
Yep.
question. Can this site legally and safely be built? If the answer is no, we should identify a site that can.
So-
I respectfully ask the council to pause the RFP and choose a housing site that can safely meet the fire code. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you. And we really need to respect the 3 minutes, just because I know there are a lot of people that are here to talk, but thank you, Sue. And I know we've worked on this for 3 or 4 years together. Next public comment member. Thank you. Hi. Welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to go in a totally different direction. I think it hasn't been brought up this evening, but it needs to be brought up. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. My name is Danielle Dearborn, and I want to object to the town's consideration of acquisition of the 22-acre Caltrans site along the east side of Interstate 280. First, the proposed area is the only open space left on the east side within the town's jurisdiction. Furthermore, it is a recognized California wildflower preserve and a protected monarch butterfly habitat, and thus must not be paved over with a parking lot or constructed with a hotel, homes, offices, or structures of any kind. In addition, when the town dedicated Barclay Field, with which we are its most proximate and impacted residents, the town made a commitment that this land would never be developed for any reason. Second, the town council continues to look almost exclusively at areas in Woodside east of 280 as the solution for the town's land needs. Those of us living there have been told repeatedly that other parts of Woodside, specifically near our downtown, would be considered for future projects, and yet here we are again asking you to make good on past promises. Third, at the very least, continuing to pursue this will alienate both the town's east side residents and our neighbors. And while you each represent your respective districts, you personally and the town as a whole look unprofessional and even entitled every time you go back on your word. Finally, related to the above, it's disconcerting at best that until now, there haven't been any public hearings seeking public comment about the town acquiring this land. When it appears our elected officials do things in secret, trust and confidence erode. In closing, I urge you to reiterate your prior promise to us and remove any and all Caltrans land acquisition from consideration. As well, I ask that you do whatever is within your power and ability and influence to ensure once and for all we will never see future development of any kind in this sensitive, protected area. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And then we'll go to Zoom room next, but after. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but, some similar comments on the same 22-acre parcel.
Yep.
Again, as was just mentioned, it's, the development seems to keep going east of 280 versus west of 280. That particular location, has the highway, obviously, even in the public health guidelines by the California Air Resource Board, it says, don't put housing within 500 feet of a highway. And you're going to put high density units within that area of the highway. It's right on the pipeline. So it's on the pipeline, it's right on the highway, and it's also got a hillside that's going to keep whatever pollution in right there. So it's a very, in addition to the, destroying the natural habitat, it also is a pretty unhealthy place to put high density housing. The other element is 280. I mean, as you go up and down 280, everybody on the whole peninsula enjoys, the scenic views. That is something that has been preserved in every community along 280, and that would completely disregard that whole original intent around 280. So I'd again ask, and very well said in terms of, not developing that land. We had the agreement when Barclay Park was done that would not be developed. And even in this meeting, it's like the thing that doesn't exist, but everybody knows it exists, right? So it's been in the San Francisco paper that you're looking to buy it, but there's no public hearing, there's no public discussion on it. So I would expect that there would, if you do plan on proceeding at all, that you would have a public process for it so that people could, besides myself, could come out and, give the issues with it. Thank you.
That's great. Just because it's come up twice, let me just say that we reported out a month ago that any initial response when the town is offered real property starts in closed session for one session, and we committed to any other session should there be any response. Of course, it would be a public process. I just want people to be clear about that. So thank you, though. Appreciate the comment. Other comments? We'll go to the Zoom room. Mr. Middleman.
Good evening, David Middleman, 280 Grandview up in the Western Hills. You mentioned earlier that, two of these sites are adding density in 1 square mile on the north end of town. And part of the discussion 3 years ago was about spreading development throughout the town. With all due respect to our planning director, I feel that the report is missing some important details. The report lacks a geographic representation of development, which would be useful for guiding further policy changes toward this goal. For example, the programs that we've already implemented fulfilling that goal of adding density throughout the town, or is it still focused on certain areas of town? Secondly, while the report includes progress in terms of units, it does not include progress on the promised programs. For example, one such program I am aware that we have failed to complete is program H6.2.C, the evaluation and modification of development standards in the Western Hills. Using the model developed in the Glens, evaluate opportunities to relax development standards, including minimum lot sizes, to provide property owners with more development flexibility, which will remove barriers for the construction of new residential units and additions or remodels to existing units. Complete this review and adopt an ordinance to modify development standards in the Western Hills neighborhoods by the end of 2025. I quoted that from the housing element. We should report progress to HCD on both unit numbers and program development. Without doing so, feels as if we are hiding the areas where we are falling short. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Yeah, you want to, great.
Sure. The numbers in the housing element, particularly some of the due dates, were set many years ago. When we were in the very prolonged period of review by HCD, We asked them if we could come up with more realistic timeframes for exactly this program being one of them, because the due date for adopting new standards of Western Hills was established long ago, and the delay by HCD pushed everything back. They refused to allow additional time for that. It is on the work plan, but we actually have a call with HCD tomorrow to discuss that with them. And I will assure you staff is moving as quickly as it can. I mean, during this time period, you've had a change in managers, you've had a change in public works directors, you've lost your administrative service director. There's only, I feel like I need to defend the plant staff here. There's only so much people can do if they're working as hard as they can work. And we will be assuring HCD that we intend to get to this as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And Sage, you.
I just want to add that the report does go through all of the programs. So it's a requirement as each annual progress reports. I forget exactly which table it is, but it requires that we go through each of the programs and report the status. So that is included in the report. And I will note, a planner that helps us a lot with housing issues has been on extended leave. We thought it'd be 3 months. It's kind of going on 8 months. So it's on our plan. Just want to reiterate that.
Thank you very much. Please.
Hello, good evening. My name is
Hi.
Stacy Harris. I stood here a couple of years ago, speaking to most of the same of you in the room. So good evening, council members, Burish, Brown, Gold, Wall, Mayor Demkowski, and town staff. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the leadership this council showed a few years ago regarding the Farm Hill site. When it became clear that exploring a rezoning there would conflict with the original intent of the land donation, the council finally withdrew support. I want to give a special call out to Councilmember Wall. You ultimately led that effort to honor the town's legal obligations to the Woodhill Estates neighbors and why that land was donated to Barclay Park. Many of us remember that evening, and I sure hope we're going to see the same leadership again with this decision for you guys to stand back from exploring the 22-acre parcel owned by Caltrans, not for sale, and that you have no obligation from which to develop. Danielle Dearborn and Bob Ragusa were here. They already shared all the things that you know about this beautiful open space, that it sits on top of a PG&E pipeline, that there are species that are to be protected. But we should also point out that Stanford has protected 8,000 acres of its rolling hills, and that Woodside's own Lawler Creek, or some kind of area that you'll all know about, was sold as private land, 92 acres, and it wasn't even allowed to be developed on. But yet somehow, someone in this room, or maybe prior to this room, thought it was appropriate to have a senator get on his side and bring forward a plan to donate uninhibitable, undevelopable land without anybody knowing, without any community input, and without any people wanting it. And so that's all been done. Now it's up to all of you to make the same good promises that you've been elected to make, which is to make the right decision and squash this possibility now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we'll go to the Zoom room for Wendy.
Good evening.
Hi,
My name is Wendy Buckley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I've lived for 29 years on Ridgeway Road in Woodside Hills. I currently serve as the president of the Woodside Hills Homes Association. I'm sorry not to be there in person, but I am in Southern California, so I appreciate this option to join via Zoom. I'm joining tonight to say that I am shocked that the council is even discussing the possible acquisition of the Caltrans land on the east side of 280. Woodside has an approved housing element, already contentious, but this plan already disproportionately burdens eastern Woodside, which represents about 20% of the acreage of the town, with 75 to 90% of the proposed multifamily housing units in the plan, if you include Kenyatta College. We were told that this was unavoidable because the town owns some of the parcels in the plan, and therefore the state can force us to build on them. So why would you even think of buying more land? particularly this land. It is the last open space in Woodside Hills. I wonder, does open space only have value in Western Woodside? We've also been told recently that the TCAP update process would possibly add some housing units in the downtown area, which makes total sense. Now suddenly this new piece of land is on the table and mysteriously being presented as nearly a done deal in the press. Where did this come from? Who in this room wants this? From what I've read, the idea seems to have come from two people, Chris Shaw and Josh Becker, neither of whom is on the council, and Mr. Becker doesn't even live here. Do we have an unelected shadow council in Woodside? I hope not. And this is a wild guess, but I am betting that Mr. Shaw lives on the western side of 280. Frankly, I think this Caltrans land is a bright, shiny object meant to distract from the work of the TCAP process to more equitably share the allocation of multifamily housing around Woodside. Lastly, I find it incredible that the council member who represents Woodside Hills is being excluded from the discussions on this topic because he lives in Woodside Hills. So who is representing me and my other Eastern Woodside neighbors in your closed-door sessions? You have just disenfranchised 1/4 of the town's residents. This is the most significant issue affecting this area in decades, and we have no voice at the table. That is wrong. So I am asking the rest of the council, please, just say no to this terrible idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and residents. I come up here tonight along with many of my fellow residents to rise in strong opposition to the 22-acre Caltrans parcel being acquired by the town. Woodside's identity rests on preserving our open space and beautiful character. And as an Eastern Woodside resident and father of 2 young children, it's of utmost importance to me that that character is maintained. It's a major part of why we moved to this town in the first place. Acquiring this parcel and adding it to our inventory, as has been said, at a time when the RHNA mandates and is pressuring us to develop existing town-owned sites is not only unnecessary, but is something that could impact others who have young families like myself and anyone else with a long-term outlook for Woodside for generations. Even small moves forward could have reverberations that we believe my family and others that I've spoken with in the town believe are extremely detrimental to the character of Woodside and that we want to stand strongly in opposition to. It's been said before about the public hearings and lack thereof for this, and I look forward to returning for any public hearings that would take place, but I hope and urge the council to halt any and all negotiations for this space. We should preserve this open space for all of Woodside, both us Eastern residents and the rest of the town. It's a beautiful, beautiful space, and prioritize our shared values over unnecessary expansion. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, Gene, is it worth, I mean, I think because of the article and there's some starting to feel a little bit more advanced than perhaps actually where we are. Could you comment a little bit about the fact that we were reached out to and we just wanted to know what they were thinking, and that's kind of where we are.
I can communicate to you what I
Yeah.
know. This was a process that was being led by Town Manager Ledbetter during his time period here. So here's what I understand. My understanding is that Caltrans reached out. I don't have any information on other than what I've also read in the press of why that occurred. But Caltrans reached out, indicated they were going to market the property, and indicated that they were interested in knowing if Woodside would like to enter into discussions with them about a potential acquisition. We scheduled one closed session, as allowed under the Brown Act, to ask that question. And although the council was not obligated at the end of that session to report out, you did. And what you reported out is that there was interested in finding out from Caltrans what their plans were for the site and what the terms for acquisition would be. There's been one follow-up meeting, which I attended. Town Manager Ledbetter was supposed to attend, but he declined to do so. And Caltrans just confirmed, yes, they are going to market the property, and indicated that if we were serious about looking at it, they'd like us to get back to them, and I've done nothing further.
Mhm. And also, as I recall, it would be a fair market price, which would be unattainable for the town of Woodson.
Sorry, but I don't have any
Okay.
information other than that one
won't-
question
I
that was
won't-
asked.
We're not going to lead that. I got to take one from the Zoom room quick. Kendra?
Kendra, you could unmute yourself.
Kendra, you might be on mute. I think we'll come back. We're going to come back to you. And we'll go here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's always a little tough.
Thank you. Martin Dunsby. Firstly, on the Caltrans, having worked with Caltrans, that sounds astonishingly proactive of Caltrans to reach out and offer us 22 acres. I can't conceive of Caltrans independently and just doing that. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make is we all know that we've got significant traffic and parking problems here in the town. And if we put housing, particularly new multifamily housing, in places that are kind of effectively isolated with only a single road access, which both the parcels suffer from that, we're going to force every resident in those houses to go get in their cars for anything that they need and drive here and park in our scarce parking spaces. We've got a phenomenal set of infrastructure here in the town center: schools, bars, hotels, the supermarket, the library, lots of jobs for people. We need people to fill the jobs. We should be building multifamily housing here in the town center where people can walk to those things, freeing up our spaces, reducing the traffic, helping support the merchants in our community, putting their kids through our schools, participating in these kinds of offerings. It's crazy to go put these people in fields in the middle of nowhere when we can build maybe not 16 lots in 16 homes in one lot, but we've got space here. This is where we should be building community, building our town center into the center.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll try Karen in the Zoom room.
Yeah. Hi,
Hi.
Karen Schultz. Hi. I applaud that response there. I also would just like to ask regarding the parcel off of High Road. Will those residents where will their children be allowed to go to elementary school? Which school districts will those?
High Road,
families?
I believe is Redwood City School District.
Okay. So again, you've chosen the most eastern part of Woodside that will not have any effect on your public schools, on your school systems. And I think that's a very interesting choice and something that we're considered part of Woodside because you need the land, but we're not allowed to participate in the school districts and the elementary schools of your that define that Woodside has. So I just wanted to make that point. Again, on the eastern side being used for land versus the western side. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll jump to Harpreet.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Harpreet and Nina from the Woodridge area. We were heavily involved in the discussions 3 years ago when we were talking about the Farm Hill land. The town did the right thing then, and we would urge you again to do the right thing. This is a very important piece of land for us to enjoy the outdoors. You see many people there with their families, with their pets. I would really, I won't repeat what my neighbors have said, but I would urge you to not buy land that you haven't looked into the traffic flow, the environmental concerns, and the safety concerns on what is on that land, and is it safe for humans to habit it and build housing on it. This seems like, I agree with the person before me who said that Caltrains came forward to try and sell the land. I'm very surprised that they would. This feels like there is something going on internally in a backdoor attempt to try and bring this area back in for the housing consideration. Please don't do this. We enjoy the land, and you kept your promises. You honored the covenants 3 years ago. Don't turn your back on legal agreements, covenants. It makes a mockery of all of the legal documentation that surrounds this area. Please go back and look at your notes. You did say you would explore the downtown area. Please go back and do that, because that is really where folks that need this type of housing find jobs, and making them commute and use transportation systems isn't the right answer. They should be able to walk to their jobs and find transportation that gets them to their jobs relatively easily without having to own cars as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Sage has got you covered.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I almost went too low. My name is Donna Howe. I'm a Woodside resident, speaking in support of preserving the 22-acre Caltrans parcel, also known as Flax Hill by some of us, as open space and as an active wildlife corridor. This parcel sits immediately adjacent to the wildlife passage under Interstate 280. Monitoring by the Felidae Conservation Fund through camera traps and scat collection has already documented multiple species using this crossing, including bobcat, mule deer, and coyote, with mountain lions observed in the surrounding area. These observations are part of a much larger scientific effort. Felidae operates a regional network of more than 150 wildlife cameras across the Bay Area to understand how animals move through landscapes increasingly affected by development. This location was selected specifically because it sits next to high-quality habitat connected to the Santa Cruz Mountains and the protected watershed lands of Crystal Springs Reservoir. Highways like Interstate 280 are major barriers for wildlife. For wide-ranging species, such as the mountain lion, highways can effectively function as walls unless safe crossing points exist. But wildlife crossings only work if the surrounding land remains natural. When development occurs immediately adjacent to these crossings, animals will often avoid them entirely. Protecting the land around the crossing is just as important as the crossing itself. This area also supports native grassland habitat and rare plant species that are increasingly uncommon on the peninsula. Once landscapes like this are fragmented, they're extremely difficult to restore. There is also an important planning context. Under California Assembly Bill 1889, I'd love to hear more about that, cities and counties must incorporate wildlife and habitat connectivity into the conservation element of their general plans by 2028. Protecting known wildlife corridors like this one will help Woodside meet those planning goals. I recognize the seriousness of the housing challenges facing our town. This 22-acre parcel of land is not appropriate for development. Land that functions as a documented wildlife corridor deserves careful consideration. If the town does pursue acquisition of this property, or if the property is given to the town, I strongly encourage the council to prioritize preserving it as open space and protecting this functioning wildlife corridor. Wildlife crossings across major highways are rare. Woodside could protect one that is
Excuse me, it's
already
been 3
working.
minutes.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We'll try again, Kendra, in the Zoom room.
Sorry about that. My phone kicked me off. Okay. My name is Kendra Blundell, and I'm a third generation Woodside resident. My children are now fourth generation here. I'm sure that everyone who read about Mr. Ledbetter's report had some thoughts about what might have happened. However, anyone who's ever been involved with a board or a council and who's had to undergo legal action knows that there could easily be all sorts of details that are not public. So no one should jump to conclusions. For that reason, I don't have formed opinions on what must have happened between the named men. Conclusions will be drawn in time with attorneys. What concerns me is that this issue could taint the plight that I have earnestly been fighting for ever since the beginning of this housing element having been started. I believe to my core that Raimondo Drive should not be added to the list of places for building high density housing. I've been arguing this for years now, in writing, in person, over Zoom, with council members themselves. Someone said tonight the issue is that all the residents of this town don't have trust in the town council after this report. I lost mine a long time ago. Much like Don Pugh mentioned earlier, it was much more obvious that the council was concerned not even with the requirements of the housing element, but who they wanted to make happy or not make angry by sites or plans that were already struck down. There were other options that made much more sense that got taken away, not because of the land, but because of the people involved. And that's not right or fair or appropriate. And that's what breaks trust with the public. You're asking about resident input. Well, that seems a little disingenuous. Here's my repeated input. Raimondo Drive is not an appropriate place to build. And if you gave me the next 15 minutes to debate it, I could go on in detail. That site should not be used as high density housing. I think the council should go with the option that was offered tonight to sell it to be kept open. We are a long dead end road. We're against open space, which is a particular fire hazard. You want to talk about Woodside identity? We're an equestrian community. You know, I ride Woodside. Raimondo is part of that heritage. We're part of the trail system. We have access to Huddard Park. We have many, many people who trailer here to ride their horses from here, even people who aren't owners on this land. We have our own equine therapy center, NCFT, on our road. We have high density pedestrian and horse traffic. There's so many joggers and walkers who come here. It's not a conducive place to have more traffic and congestion, but you want to put another 17 units that'll put dozens or more cars onto the road. And as been mentioned before, all these projects that you're talking about let out into the same small area of Kenyatta on the north end of Woodside. It's not ideal. We don't have public transit. We're not walking distance from the center of town. We're not near any amenities. None of this makes sense. Please remove Raimondo from your plans and find a new, more appropriate site. Thank you.
You. Hi. I guess, yeah, okay, Steve.
I think.
Oh, I didn't, yeah, Stephanie's next. Yeah, I didn't realize the line was all the way back. Yeah, Stephanie. Hi.
I just have a quick question. At the beginning of the report, you mentioned that there are 16 low-income units at 773 Kenyatta being proposed. How are you going to show the state that those are low-income units?
Would you be able to respond?
Right now, the housing element has a target of 16 moderate income units. That's a target, and it will pan out to see what gets built there. So at this point, we don't have a project proposed other than the subdivision.
Well, okay, but it was at the beginning of the report. Am I wrong? Did you say that there was 16 low-income units?
No, what we indicated was exactly what the planning directors just said. We were quoting from the housing element, what is shown as projections in the housing element.
Oh, only shown as projections. Well, I'm not sure how you're going to prove that there's any low-income housing if you want to put low-income housing at 773. It's becoming a problem because I don't know how you're going to prove to the state that it's actually 16 units are going to be low-income housing at 773. How do you prove that to the state if they were going to be low-income housing?
A project has different mechanisms in which they can record different income levels. So just to reiterate, the housing element has a target of 16 moderate income housing units at that site.
So it's moderate. So
That's what it's always been, just to be clear.
Okay.
It's in the housing element, 16 moderate income housing 16 moderate income units is a target to be met at that site. These are targets that the town will try to meet.
Okay. So now that's meeting. Okay, thank you.
You? Yeah, hi, of course. Back to back makes sense, I think, in this case.
David
Hi.
Disher, I've been here many times talking about 773. Page 3 talks about the remaining 9 acres being rezoned. When we talk to our neighbors about this project over the years, a lot of them say, well, the owner is a big-time property developer and builder, very rich, lives in Woodside, very influential. He knows how to influence. I say to them, I've met with each of you except for Councilmember Brown, some of you more than once. And I say to them, I've found them very forthright. Have some faith. You are going to have an incredibly important discretionary decision when these 9 acres come to you eventually to rezone from SR1 to R1. Something that is very, very unusual. I've asked Kevin Bryant, I've asked Jason Ledbetter, I've asked Sage, what are the criteria to make this decision? Completely subjective. So when my neighbors read what was in that report and they understand what I just said, some of them just give up. And I try and say, have some faith. In my job, I have become aware of how lobbying works. Former politicians become lobbyists, and they use their personal relationships with other politicians on behalf of their clients. Unfortunately, that's one of the allegations in this whistleblower report. I'm going to keep my faith in you. I've met you individually. But I've got to tell you, there is a shaking of confidence, especially with what's going on with 773, because it is so discretionary. I don't know how the investigation will get at some of these issues that relate to somebody who's not a public official anymore. And that concerns me. I have talked about one of the most important parts of this project is the road, and you've listened to me, and that's now not part of the plan, and I'm very happy about that. But the neighbors are still incredibly concerned about this rezoning, what it means for the community, what it means for Woodside at large. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go back to the Zoom room for Alexandra.
Yes, hello. My name is Alexandra Nemirovsky. I'm a resident of Woodside Hills on Crest Road. We have lived there since 2002. Quarter of century. And I'm sure if we were to do a survey of all of the residents, all of 250 some households of Woodside Hills, not one of them would be in favor of developing the Caltrans parcel. But I wanted to speak on a positive note and just draw a picture that makes most sense to me. We are obligated by the state to build affordable housing units. We have our town workers, our firefighters, our teachers, and we are a fairly well-off town. So why do we need to sell our surplus lands to the developer, and then God knows who will move into those units? If we could just take a parcel downtown when teachers can walk to the school, when the town workers could walk to town, the firefighters are right there, and develop maybe a smaller number of units, maybe not, 15, maybe 10 units, but we wouldn't have to sell that land. We would just hire a builder and build 10 or 12 affordable units and make our special program for our people and meet the state requirements at the same time. Tell me why it is not possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we tried some zoning overlays in the downtown in the last cycle, and we couldn't get private property owners interested, but it's a great idea. We certainly support it. Ms.
Hi.
Hanson.
I'm Kim Hanson, live on Raymundo. I've been coming to talk to y'all about this for maybe every meeting. But tonight was real. I've got so much to say, but tonight was so different because of Attorney Jerry. I think that everyone has come here with the best intentions to deal with the pressures from the state, to try to represent our constituents, and to try to solve the problems that's been put upon us by the state. But in all of these discussions, there was no talk about selling the land. There was no talk about leasing the land. We were going to partner with a developer. And now for the first time, I'm hearing that the land may change hands. I'm also hearing for the first time that it would have these permanent covenants, that we would actually change. Like, all of this is new. So even with the best intentions, at what point did you guys say, holy shit, we need somebody who knows what's going on? When did that happen? We were told, relax, once we identify these sites, we have to do this by the state. We'll just rezone them and see what happens. We'll see what developers come up and make a proposal. We'll partner with them. We weren't told they would be designated as surplus land forever and forever determined. And they're not surplus land. Surplus land is land you don't need. The land on Raymundo is land we've been using. And I've got so much to say, but I'm gonna pivot. So if the state is saying that we have to present an RFP under their timeline, then we need to define this. Like, who's going to write the RFP? Is it going to be a lease? Are we going to sell it? Are the residents going to have to pay for everything? Is town going to own it? What is the price? Will town subsidize or partner? Are you going to ask citizens to pay for this, as well as any modifications to comply with fire code? Are we going to have to pay for the new fire engine that we don't have for 3-story buildings? Now I've heard from Attorney Jerry that 80% has to be developed. Does that mean we're going to put high density with only like a little strip of concrete or maybe some annual plants planted? I mean, and do we have to wait for our families to burn while we borrow a fire truck and we're stuck and can't defend or evacuate? I mean, who pays for this compliance? Also, we have no sewer for the Raymundo site. So who's going to pay for the $3 million infrastructure that's put in, as well as increased sewer rates and any town and downstream structure? I don't want to pay for that. And then if my 73-year-old house, if the septic fails, then I don't get to shit, shower, and shave. I just have to let the apartment down the street with 17 units do their thing, and I do nothing. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Steve Lubin again. I think a lot of the comments tonight have pointed out really the folly of the way the town approached the housing element in the first place by going out and trying to make deals with individual property owners. You only succeeded with one of those, and that ended up in our backyard. But there should have been comprehensive planning, looking at the carrying capacity, looking where there's transportation, looking where there's sewage. And it should have been approached from a planning point of view, and then created zoning that allowed private people to develop properties on a smaller scale, more missing middle sort of things. We can still do that. it's as far as 773 Kenyatta Road. It's there's currently a parcel map before the town that has 20 units on that. I actually think that might, it's more than the 16, but they're smaller and more compact, which I think is a better design. I don't know if it's going to end up with that many, but maybe they could be cheaper. But how then with a private developer I think Sage has asked for this from the developer, but how do you see that those continue to be affordable? That's a huge issue with that. As far as the 22 acres, it's really suspicious that Chris Shaw and our senator first, talk to the Chronicle about this, and there it is. And then all of a sudden, you all know, I've been, 1976, I was on the Wildflower Committee. I drew a map showing controlled access and informational signage for that site. The town asked Caltrans to maintain that site as a wildflower reservation when Caltrans wanted to sell it after 280 was built. That it appears in the Chronicle, and then all of a sudden, while I'm trying to work through the Open Space Committee to get the general plan modified for this site, the town has a non-public hearing about it. This, you can only imagine how surprised I was. And my last comment is about unpermitted ADUs. A little over a year ago, there was a state legislation that required ADUs, unpermitted ADUs, to be legalized, only meeting health and safety codes, not meeting local ordinances or planning codes. We have a client who came into the town, and the building department came up with a very expensive list of stuff for them to do. I've been trying to work with Sage, who says, yes, this is the law. And we're now trying to convince the building department to get with the program and make it easier for people to legalize ADUs. And I hope you support that effort.
Great, thank you. We'll do one more and then we'll jump to the Zoom.
My last?
Well, so far. Night is young.
Good evening. My name is Rick Dalton. My wife and I and our family moved to Woodside Hills about a little over 30 years ago, and we enjoy and love our community. We love our neighbors and all the things about Woodside. And I might say at the outset that you guys have a hard job. I think we all understand that. I, for one, appreciate that. Before I launch into some complaints, let me at least say thank you. Listen, yeah. Listen, and by the way, one of the sentiments you've heard earlier, those of us who live on the east side, frankly, it's a little frustrating. I mentioned my kids, I wasn't able to take them to Woodside schools. I had to find other schooling for them. So it's a little uncomfortable, frankly, living on the east side and always having issues come down against, and if you have a problem, squish it over to the other side of 280. It is a little frustrating. However, there are serious issues related to the two parcels that you've pegged. And I know you understand that. I'm sure the town management understands that, but there are serious issues that we who live there and are concerned about the safety issues. We're concerned about the fire issues. We're concerned about the grading issues and the traffic issues. We would like to have a voice in this. And I, for one, would plead with you, ask you, please respect your neighbors on the east side. Allow us a voice before you go out to an RFP. Allow a neighborhood committee of some form to at least express and have a voice in some of these issues. We understand that housing is important. We understand it needs to happen. If it's going to happen in our neighborhood, not your neighborhood, in our neighborhood, please give us the time, give us the opportunity to voice our concerns. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it sincerely, and thanks for the time.
Thank you. Okay.
I just want to take like 1 minute left of my first question. How are you going to prove moderate?
I'm going to take somebody from the
okay.
Zoom room, and then we'll see if we can do second bites or not. So this is iPad 67.
You're muted. You could unmute yourself.
iPad 6.7, you appear to be muted. Okay, well, is there another public comment? Yes, hi, Dahlia.
Hi, I have three things. You heard Steve's anger about Flax Hill, and he has been working on it since 1976. And he not many people know this, but he was instrumental in getting Caltrans stopped by going to the PUC from PG&E, sorry, 80-foot swath. When, you know, how wide is a truck to get in? And so we managed to get them to reduce the size of the swath. And then we had Craig Drayman, who's been working on Kite Hill, to help with the restoration. It's a beautiful site. Pretty soon, if not right now, the wildflowers are spectacular. So I encourage you all to go out there. There's a hole in the fence next to Barkley Fields, and you can get there. Second, 773, the plan as currently proposed is really bad. It's horrible. We accept that it will be developed, but it's got to be done smartly. And the current plan violates so many, aesthetic, design guideline, general plan issues. So I hope it will have a proper review. And lastly, I did not know this during the housing meetings, and we only found out recently, and Sage now knows about it, about if a structure was built before 2020, AB 2533 says you don't have to bring it up to code. And I brought this to you in our discussions. I said, if this takes the pressure off your numbers and helps with the overall requirement, I would like the town to put out some kind of a notice or a letter. I can bring you 15 ADUs tomorrow if these people know they don't have to spend $20,000 or $30,000 to upgrade them. They exist. We used to joke when Steve was on the Planning Commission, I was on the ASRB, about all these granny units. And I said, well, how many grannies are visiting Woodside? But they're out there. And it might help with your numbers, but not a lot of people know about it. The staff only found out about it about, a year and a half ago. I think, it's not a well-known fact, but AB 2533 says we can do this. And I encourage the council to look into this and maybe somehow make it public, because people may come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Yes.
Oh, this is good. Teresa Seflick, a Newtown resident of Woodside Hills. I've been listening to the proceedings, and everyone's committed to transparency, but the only time, and please excuse my naivete for how these things happen, but the only time that I've heard anything that's talked about a vote is when Jean was talking about the infrastructure for the sewer, and that might have to go to a bond, and then there would be a vote. I've heard committees asked to be formed. I've heard a lot of impassioned speeches. And I've heard, yes, we're committed to transparency, and yes, we'll have public hearings, and yes, there will be points in the process where you can be heard. There's being heard, and there's having teeth. And I've heard nowhere along these lines where we have any teeth. We can be heard, and that's great, and that's wonderful, but I mean, when do we have teeth? It seems like there's been a lot of talk about representation that really wasn't voted for or perhaps approved ahead of time. So I'm just curious as to where's our teeth?
Thank you. I think what we're doing tonight is trying to incorporate what we're hearing, and not that we can give direction tonight because this is an informational report out, but it's certainly helping us form what we think we're going to need to do in order to engage with the public to get all the input that needs to go into this process. So we're trying. Hi, Stephanie, for your extra minute, you said.
Thank you. It's important that we know where the numbers are coming from. So if we have this private landowner developing this up to 20 acre at 773, and we're going to designate it as multifamily, as medium income, and we're going to designate it as medium income, then he either has to deed restrict or he has to turn in a lot of paperwork. The owners have to turn in a lot of paperwork. It affects how much he can make on the property. Is he willing to do that?
There's no development project on the table. We don't have an application to develop the
I thought the
property.
application had been turned in.
It is just to subdivide the property. That's all we have been proposed so far.
Okay, well,
Once someone proposes to develop it, we'd have to go through all of those details.
so the third way that you can prove median income is by the town writing an analysis. With this number of houses on this piece of property, built and constructed this way, it has to be medium income. Does the town feel that they could justify an analysis to the housing limit?
We're not anywhere close to that analysis. We're simply processing a subdivision map at this time.
All right, well, it seems very hard to believe that a private landowner would designate it his own property as median income without some kind of incentives. And those incentives were never talked about when this site was chosen. And I just don't think that you can count it as median income.
It's just a target, so we'll see what project comes before us.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to try iPad 6-7 one more time.
I think that's me. Is that it? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, hi. My name is Tony Donaldson and I live on High Road. And I've been listening to all the comments and I feel like I'm back 3 years ago, listening to the same things over and over. And when you talk about public opinion and inputting things, it's very frustrating for me because we've tried for 3 years to give public opinion and input and show up at meetings and try to present, objections to things. And it just doesn't seem to go anywhere other than the one parcel that you did take off because it had already been promised that it would never be used for building. So the issues that you're looking at on Raimondo and on High Road, which is the fire issues, they're both streets that you go into and then there's one way in and one way out. On High Road, there's traffic, a horrible traffic in the morning on Woodside Road coming off of High Road, and in the afternoon. We've got a high school across the street. We've got people coming off of 280 that backs up for 20 minutes. Now, between now and May, you can't even drive down High Road most of the time, except on the weekends, because they're working on the road and it's closed off. So we have to go all the way, almost from High Road, Woodside, all the way up to Alameda to get anywhere. That's another 10 minutes in, another 10 minutes out. You do that a couple of times a day and you've put an extra hour onto whatever you're doing during the day. These things that you're talking about, traffic patterns and fire hazards and PG&E easements and sewer issues, shouldn't those have been looked at before these parcels were actually put on a housing element? I mean, what happens if on High Road the sewer issue is they can't build on it, or the PG&E easement takes up too much of the parcel? I mean, shouldn't these things have been looked at before they were put on there? And all of these sites being, again, on this side of the freeway, where the people that are going to be living in these low income units are not going to have Woodside services. They're not going to be able to go to Woodside schools. They're not going to be within walking distance of going downtown and eating or going to Roberts or anything else. So it doesn't seem fair. And we feel like, and I know that many of my neighbors, we feel like second-class citizens. We pay taxes, we live here, but we don't have the same benefits that the rest of the people in Woodside on the other side of the freeway have. And you're going to be taking away our only open space around here and making it even more congested than it really is. And quite honestly, I feel like nobody really cares. We've been talking about this for 3 years. Nothing has changed. Nothing.
Thank you. Hi. Yes, please. Karen.
Good evening to you all. Thank you for your service in those long nights and long days. I'm Karen Offen. I live on Raimundo, and I'd like to cede my 3 minutes to Sue Paletti because she's got more to say.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, Sue.
Thank you. I need to take this off because I get nervous.
Oh, can you restart her for 3 minutes? Oh,
Are you
yeah.
restarting it?
I'm going to
Thank
give
you.
you the 3.
Well, I'm actually speaking for Karen and for several other neighbors on Raimundo who were unable to attend tonight but asked that I share their concerns. We want to address the existing neighborhood argument that may be raised. The idea that the California Fire Code D107 only applies to new developments and not to established neighborhoods like ours. Our neighborhood, Tract 567 Raimundo Rancho Cañada, is an old development, and the fire code evolves as risks change. Even if D107 was originally written with new developments in mind, the life safety purpose of the code does not change. The basic problem is this: one road serving more than 30 dwellings becomes a single point of failure for evacuation and emergency access. That is why D107 requires 2 access roads whenever a single road serves more than 30 dwellings. The purpose is simple and critical: to provide a backup access, a second way in and out in case one road is blocked. If this Raimundo RFP adds 17 to 30 additional units, the total number of dwellings served by this single road would increase to approximately 47 to 60 dwellings. That's far beyond the code's threshold, and it would occur on our street bordered by more than 20,000 acres of wildfire fuel where evacuations matter most. Adding more units increases the number of dwellings dependent on a single road, which directly impacts the life safety for both residents and firefighters. And importantly, the code counts the number of dwellings served, not just the new units being proposed. The life safety purpose of the code, redundant emergency access, is triggered whenever increased occupancy increases the risk. Courts have also held agencies cannot ignore life safety standards simply because a neighborhood predates the code. The mission of the California Fire Code under Section 101.1 is clear: to protect life and liberty from fire, to ensure firefighters can safely access structures, and to minimize risk during evacuation. Every provision in the code, including D107, exists to serve that single overriding purpose: life safety. And life safety does not depend on when a neighborhood was built. I've got 52 seconds less. We can widen Raimundo Runnymede. We can add turnouts. We can double the size of the cul-de-sac. But there's one law existing still. No matter how much mitigation, we need a second separate fire apparatus access code road to that new development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue. And, remember, because of your advocacy and the advocacy of your neighbors, we did add a second egress zoning overlay at the time we did the CEQA review. So it is in there, and that would be presumably part of any RFP process. Bye.
Hi, my name is Janet Estep. I've lived on Raimundo for over 50 years. I was here in 1956 when this town was incorporated. At the end of Raimundo, where it's rounded off to go on to Runnymede, that was made round because it was not deemed in the 1960s safe enough for a school bus to go up Raimundo. So all the children had to go down to that corner and wait for the bus. And it was enlarged and made in a circle so that the bus could turn around safely. You also have over 50 horses that would have to be evacuated from not just Runnymede, but from the private homes on Raimundo, which are 35 driveways. Each of them do not have a horse now. They did when I first lived there. But that does not mean that there is less traffic. It just means there are less horses. Horses have the right of way over people and vehicles. Any horse that is being transported down has the right of way before anybody else can evacuate. But I also raised the point that those people coming down are also going to be blocking the first responders that are going up. 1.5 miles. That's how long it is around Raimondo up to the cul-de-sac, which is undersized and cannot establish a turnabout for the existing fire trucks that now service this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll close comments. I know this is an informational report, but is there any additional thoughts or deliberations by council members? Yes, sir.
First, I wanted to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Message sent, message received. I can only speak for myself. I've been saying pretty much the same message for the last 4 years. I did want to give just at the, I think it's important to know why we're here tonight and what we can do and what we can't do. So this is the annual report to HCD. Just where are we on our housing element? We have to do it every single year. Is that correct? Yeah, this is the annual report. By the way, Woodside is going to be one of the few towns and cities in the state that's going to come even close to making our number, which is kind of interesting. We're going to do that because we have a lot of ADUs and there's a lot of interest in ADUs. We're, not like Redwood City or some of the other cities. This is, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday's Daily Journal. And there was an article in here about Foster City lags. Every city in town is doing what we're doing tonight. They're doing it right now because it's the annual report that they have to give. Foster City is currently at 2% of its target. That's actually a pretty high number for San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. They go through some detail here, and I'll spare you a lot of the detail, but I think some of it is important. And that is, so far, the city has completed 11 very low income units out of the required 520. 14 low income units out of 299. And 11 moderate income units out of 300, and the above there's 37 out of 777. So when you look at these numbers, this is a pipe dream from Sacramento that we're going to make these numbers. I'm going to repeat again what I've said. I can probably see the groans on some people's faces. What this is all about. Every 8 years, there's a housing cycle. We start over again, and the state in its wisdom says, we're going to make so many houses over the next 8 years. This is the 6th cycle. We've been doing this for 40, however that is, 36 years, I guess. And so we're in the middle of the 6th cycle. The number statewide for this 6th cycle, we're in the 2nd or 3rd year, I think, of this 8-year cycle, is 2.4 million homes that Sacramento says we're going to build in the state over 8 years. The math is pretty easy. You've heard me say this before. 2.4 million divided by 8 is 300,000 homes, residences a year, right? I mean, that's not tough math. We have to do that every single year for 8 years to make 2.4 million. Just to put that 300,000 into perspective, in our state's very best year, 1956, I think. Remember, millions of people moving into the state? Not like today where people are moving out of the state. The mortgage rates were low. Today, they're sky high. Building, labor, all those other things. Back then, it was just a field day. People were moving in like crazy. We built all of these. Los Altos was built in the 1950s, almost from scratch. In the best years, we did 150,000. And yet Sacramento says we're going to do 300,000 every year for 8 straight years. So you want to know how many we did in the first year of this cycle? 60,000. We missed the 300,000 by just a smidge. The next year we did 70,000. This year we're going to do about 70,000 again. We'll be lucky if we do 800,000 during the 8-year cycle out of the 2.4 million that Sacramento thinks we're going to do. So most cities and residents, municipalities are going to miss their number by a real big number. We're actually, as I said, we're going to come close because of the ADUs that we have. Lots of people who like to build ADUs. So tonight, we're only here to accept the report and send it in. We're not taking parcels off. I hate to disappoint you. We're not going to scratch High Road. We're not going to take off Raimundo. We're not going to the 773, which by the way is a private property. We don't have much control of it, as you've heard. That's owned by another gentleman, not the town. It's the town-owned properties that are the problem because we own them, we control them. We're the ones who have to solicit developers. And you heard that tonight from, I think they called you Attorney Jerry, right? That's a nice name. I've heard worse. So we're not going to make any changes. We live with this, but we are looking at the housing cycle. The seventh housing cycle begins in 2031 and in 2029, it sounds like a long ways off. I may not even be here. Hopefully I won't be here. We're going to start all over again and wipe the slate clean and start this over again, which is one reason why this parcel that a lot of people have been talking about is a big concern. So I did want to mention specifically the parcels. So the point was made, Tony Donaldson made it toward the end there. She lives on High Road. She's been in this room several times. And she made the point, this is such a horrible, it's a terribly awkward parcel. It's got a footprint of 0.7 acres that's buildable. It's got easements. You heard Attorney Jerry say tonight that it's going to be difficult to get the 80% coverage that's required. I just remember that I was sitting there for the first night. This was about 3 years ago. And I brought up the fact that there's a PG&E gas transmission line, 22 inches, big enough to crawl through. It's the same one that goes up to San Bruno that blew up and killed a bunch of people. It runs through that area and nobody seemed to know about it. I remember the then town manager, nobody seemed to know anything about it. And I was like, you did all this research on High Road and nobody knew there was a PG&E gas transmission line running through the property. Then we argued about whether it's on the property or it's off the property or whatever else. We were promised a lot of things. We never got them. And it was put on the schedule. So it's on the schedule today. Now we find out, and I think Kim Hansen made the point that I wish we knew all the stuff that Attorney Jerry had told us tonight back then, because this is the procedure. We didn't know. I didn't know for sure. A lot of this I heard for the first time tonight. But had we known it, it may certainly have affected what was on the schedule. Now we just have to live with it. And I will tell you something. I think that these are really problematic parcels. Raimundo is, High Road is. I can't comment on the private parcel at 773. It's owned by somebody, not the town. But I think they're going to be very difficult to build on, and they're going to be difficult for developers. And to be perfectly honest with you, I hope they are difficult. I've said this before. That is I just think these are really problematic. The point came up about zoning that somebody brought up and how arbitrary it is and how it just seems to be very subjective. And I think the point was made that we're going to go, it was David said it, I think, when we go from SR1 to R1, right? And how do we do that? David, this council changed open space for the preservation of natural resources, our most restrictive zoning, to multifamily with up to 20 units per acre, the most permissive zone. We went from like A to Z in one night, sitting right here. And it's completely capricious. And it really bothered me because if I've always thought zoning was this sacred thing, and that, when you buy a parcel and it's zoned a certain way, you'll never get it changed. And we seem to be changing it just like that. I mean, we just changed the most sensitive property in all of Woodside to build high-rise condominiums. I mean, it just makes no sense to me. So I think you're exactly right. It was a really good point that I thought you brought up. I think that I kept count. By the way, there were as many as 110 people in this room and on Zoom tonight. This is a big issue, and I hope the message was received at least about the parcel. It wasn't a closed session. I think there were 3 members of the public who actually spoke before the meeting. I was one of them and cautioned the council not to go forward with it. I was speaking as a member of the public, not a member of the council, because I was recused from that. And I don't want to go too far because I don't want to step on any toes and violate any regulations here. But the point was made that I think the council could have killed that 22 acres that night simply by not authorizing it. And I hope the point was made that this council actually did kill the Farm Hill parcel in its wisdom. That was a smart move. And we heard tonight that covenant that we kept was waving before our face that that was completely reversible. No, it's not completely reversible. You can't undo it. That was some misinformation. I'll be polite about it. But you can't change a covenant. And that Farm Hill parcel had a covenant that said in perpetuity, it had to be open space. And we sat in this room on the other side before I was elected, and people told us we were crazy and that they could change it if they wanted to. No, you can't. And so again, there's been a lot of, I'll just say misinformation. And I think that now we are where we are. We're with these parcels. We're gonna send out RFPs and we're gonna see what happens with them. And I really hope that, we'll end up with something smaller and more, that's more reasonable and more appropriate, or maybe nothing at all. And it seems like we are stuck where we are. But I want to congratulate and thank the people in this room, many of whom were here 4 years ago and 3 years ago and 2 years ago, and gave this exact same warning. And we said, we're going to end up right here. And guess what? We're here again with these problematic parcels that never should have been part of it. But they are now. They're not going away. We'll just see what happens with them when they get here. But again, I listened, and so far, I remember I kept count 3 years ago, and I think the count was a little over 300 people. I think it was 307 people spoke during all the public hearings we had. Nobody spoke in favor of any of the parcels. One person just said we need more affordable housing in Woodside. Well, guess what? We all agree with that. But nobody spoke in favor of any of the parcels, not Farm Hill, not Raimundo, not High Road, not 7-7. Nobody spoke in favor of any of them. Tonight, the count was 26-0, if I counted correctly. It seems to me like the only people in this town who are in favor of this are sitting here. It's the most amazing thing. I was elected to represent the people in my district, and I'm going to represent them. And, I may go down with the ship, but I'm going to represent those people. And it's not out of any great sense of pride. It's that they're counting on me. That's it. I asked to run, and they elected me, and I think I'm charged with a responsibility here, and we need to do it. And it was pointed out that Councilmember Wall actually was the first person when I was standing back there with Stacy and we were speaking, who said, something, I can no longer support the Farm Hill. That was just the Farm Hill parcel. It just doesn't make sense. We made a promise and we need to keep our word. And we were very appreciative. And then the dominoes began to fall and Farm Hill went away. And I think that this should happen tonight too, with this parcel that we're talking about along the 280. Nobody wants this. In fact, it's the only person I think who wants it is an elected official anymore. And so hopefully we're getting the message and we can make this thing go away. I certainly would if I could cast a vote on it, which I can't, but I would certainly make it go away if I could. And again, we're going to accept I believe we're going to accept the report. It's going to go in. We are where we are on this thing. We're going to continue, and let's just do everything we can. I take every comment that was made to heart, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that we end up in the right place on this thing. And we're going to do it in the public. We're going to do it in the sunshine. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the Caltrans property for a second. The first we heard about it on the council, when it came to us, is information that Caltrans has brought forward a proposal, period. We did not discuss it at any length. In fact, the question I asked was, what happens if we don't do anything? And that's the question I think everybody needs to ask in this room when you talk about, okay, if we don't move, what if somebody else comes in there and says, we're going to develop that property? It's not owned by the town. It's owned by the state. Then we have no control over it. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's what I want to do, but I'm just saying that was the decision we had to make at the time was, do we just ignore it and hope it goes away? Or do we at least try to find out more about what are the implications if we act or don't act? Simple as that. Hear any applause?
Any other comments from council? Okay. Hearing none, then.
No, sorry, Brian.
Oh, hi, Jen.
I'm
sorry, Councilmember Wall. I didn't see the hand go up.
Yes. So first off, I just want to thank everybody that came tonight and offered their comments. these nights where we have housing element on the agenda are, transparently, they're the hardest nights, because this is just such a difficult topic. And as a council member, you want to look out for the interests of your district, but we're also here to look out for the interests of Woodside as a whole, including everybody that lives in the districts around us. And so I want to assure everybody that I really do hear and take all of your comments to heart. We've been living with this current iteration of the housing element for 3+ years. It's been, long meetings, long sessions of public comment. And it's a very difficult issue because we want to react. We want to make everybody happy. At the same time, we also have to comply with our legal obligations to not only submit a housing element that HCD could certify, but also to pursue the programs and the development that we committed to in the housing element. So it's a very, very nuanced and difficult issue, and we really are just trying to do our best. I wanted to thank the staff. We really appreciated hearing about all the efforts that have been happening at the staff level to pursue our housing element programs. That's a lot of work, and we really appreciate all the work and effort that you're doing at the staff level. And Jerry, thank you for being here tonight. I definitely appreciated hearing the nuances of the surplus land process and exemptions. I think Councilmember Gold had suggested maybe the council had been privy to that information before this evening, but we had not. So that was very enlightening for me to hear. Let's see. I wanted to just touch on a couple topics in addition to just kind of, acknowledging what a difficult issue the housing element is. On public input, we very much appreciate and want to encourage as much public input as possible. And so, in addition to showing up at meetings and offering public comment when housing element is on the agenda, I'm very supportive of looking into ways to offer opportunities for public input in addition to that. So that's something that I'll commit to speaking with other council members or in our town attorney in the background to see if there are other mechanisms to bring the public to the table and solicit your input. It was mentioned a couple of times. I mean, my heart goes out the comments made about the east side and feeling like, they're treated differently. That is absolutely not the intent. Specifically, a couple people raised the topic of the school district, and I just want to, I think most people know this, but the town council has no input or bearing on the school district boundaries. That's not something that we have any connection to. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that that's something that's completely controlled by Woodside Elementary. And if we wanted to change the boundaries, in one direction or another, that's not something that we would have any impact over. And it's already been said, but on the topic of the Caltrans property, I do sense that there is a fair amount of misinformation circulating. So I'd say to those that are receiving information about the Caltrans property, I'd say receive it with a grain of salt. It's exactly the case as the town attorney stated that Caltrans approached the town. The town was obligated to hear about that in a closed session, and we authorized town staff to talk to Caltrans more. That's literally it. It hasn't gone beyond that. And I absolutely appreciate hearing all of the input tonight about how folks feel about that. And I'll certainly take that into account as to the extent this continues to be something that comes before the town council, that input is very valuable. So thank you. I know it's getting late this evening, so I'll pass it back to Mayor Domkowski to see if any other council member has any further deliberation.
Thank you, Councilmember Wall. Yes, Councilmember Eppery.
I'll be quick. Again, thank you all for coming. I think this is the most packed I've seen this and been on the council for just about a year. So I caught the very tail end of this. I really appreciate all of you coming, sharing your thoughts, including online. And I really take it to heart. And anyone who's asked to meet with me, I know a number of you I've met with in person, and I care, even though it's not in my, this is not in my district, but I understand how important it is to all of you, and I can appreciate it. And I feel the same. I share some of the same issues that you do. I represent District 5, which is in the Western Hills, and our kids don't go to, we're not districted as well for Woodside Elementary, and we have to go to different schools, even though it's closer to go to Woodside. But I can appreciate all the things all the issues you're raising, and I really do think about it. And I haven't been reached out to by any land developers, so I'm not sure if I'm just excluded from these meetings that are happening, but or if they're just, if they're not happening, I have no personal agenda here. I really want to do what's best for the town, what's best for the people here. And for the property by the freeway, I would second what Councilmember Brown said. No decision was made. I think we have an obligation on the town council to look into, something like this if it comes to us, instead of saying, no, we're not going to do it, and let's see what they do with it. If they're going to sell it to some private developer and build 100 units or something like that, I think we have a responsibility to ensure that we avoid anything like that. But yeah, absolutely no decision's been made, and I'm not. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So maybe just first off, I'll just add my thanks for the comments tonight, and back to brass tacks. This is an informational only item. That said, we do want to get as much citizen input as possible. So once we get the sewer study back next month, I think we'll have some more direction, and from there we can put together some study sessions that engage everybody to get some directional feedback. So we know that's a follow-up. We know there's follow-up on Raimundo, and we've had a lot of feedback tonight on Farm Hill, and duly noted, and a message received. So thank you on that as well. So I'm just here to acknowledge the feedback and thank you for it. There's no formal action other than to acknowledge that this is the mandated report that's going to go up to the state. And unless there's anyone here that does not want to accept this report to go, we will be approving it. I'm not seeing anybody. So we're accepting the report. So thank you all. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Appreciate it, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. We're going to reconvene, and we have item C, volunteer committee updates. Any? Melissa?
The only thing I have is that May Day Fun Run registration is going to be opening soon, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So keep an eye out for that.
Thank you. And council communications, item D. Any items?
March 21, this month, this building, that's a Saturday, 10 to 12. We're having I guess it's good timing, a memory seminar for seniors. So we can remember what was and was not said, but it starts on the 21st at 10 o'clock, and then there'll be a follow-up for a second element of that on April 25th here also. And we're working on this together with Atherton, Portola Valley, and Woodside.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilmember Brown. And then we will reopen communications. This is for public speakers on non-agendized items that were not given a chance to speak at the beginning of the meeting. Thalia. Oh, you got a handout. Thank you. Can we help you?
Yep.
Here I am, Thalia Lubin, History Committee. I'm sure you all have my book. 3215 Woodside Road is right next to the tennis courts and the school. And it is 100 years old. It's been in the same family continuously. They were sawmill owners and other jobs in Woodside. It is now going up for sale. And it's almost 3.5 acres. And you know, I have crazy ideas. I would like the town or the school to buy it. The front part with the historic house could be broken off on 1 acre, resulting in 2.5 acres behind it. I will offer Steve and I to design this if the town, for free, if the town will build, if we can build 20 on 1 acre, think of what we can do on 2.5. The teachers could walk to school, the firefighters could walk to school. Long time ago, before this housing thing came up, I went to Kevin when the red house that just got torn down next to Roberts Park, and I said, Kevin, we should buy this for housing. This is because I'm always thinking about affordable housing. Yeah, no, the town. Then the property across the street behind the fish came up for sale. Let's get this. Let's make it happen. 2.5 acres, and it's if the history committee visited the site when Elwood Veliket was still alive, and we gave him a preservation award. But it's absolutely gorgeous. It's down. It goes all the way down to the creek. It's almost an L shape, so it kind of you go straight back, and there's kind of a bit of an orchard, and then there's a whole tongue by the creek.
Listed?
I'm sorry?
Is it listed?
Mhm.
Is there a real estate listing?
Yeah.
It's coming up really fast. Not available yet.
Is it 9?
So you break off the first acre with a historic house, you sell it for a lot of money, and then the town or the school develops the rest. I mean, I'm thinking outside the box here. That's a lot of affordable housing.
Yeah.
So I can let you all know when it's open for viewing. They did a great restoration of the house itself. And when Elwood was still alive, some of you may remember he had the most beautiful rose garden out in front. And unfortunately, his daughter hasn't kept it up. But
Yeah.
thinking creatively.
It's a great idea. And I've presented twice to the school board and then met with foundation and school board members about teacher housing in some of these different spots. And I will say that this is going back a year, I did hear the property we're really interested in is this one. So I would suggest maybe, I think the school board would be an interesting place for
maybe
you
I'll
to
go
present.
give them a
Yeah,
presentation.
and the
but-
foundation.
Yeah, and to Dick's point about the Caltrans property, I just want to add, if we can get $2 million donations for a strip in the middle of Woodside Road, we could certainly come up with somebody to help us buy an undevelopable land at Flax Hill.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, any other public comments from anyone that didn't? Oh,
Yeah,
hi.
I just like to make a comment on the statement that Caltrans came to Woodside with an offer for the 22 acres. I think that's really disingenuous. That I've been trying to get Paul to support the idea of the town acquiring it as open space for a long time. He didn't like the idea because that would make it housing, but all of a sudden, Chris and our senator show up in the newspaper, and then Woodside comes to, the Caltrans comes to Woodside and make an offer. I don't believe it for a second.
Okay, and hi.
As one thing as a follow up from my original comment, I noticed you guys stated that in response to, or like you characterized in your public statement that Jason effectively extorted the town. And then I think the attorney said that the town was negotiating a severance package that would include, I don't know how much time, 6 months, with a commitment to investigate. And when I first read the statement from the town about the extortion, I was shocked. I mean, I think everyone was. There was no mention of effectively a failed severance discussion. And I understand this conversation was private. And there's only so much that you can say. But again, to the appearance of trust it seems very weird and striking that now we find that it was kind of a failed severance negotiation, but it was characterized as extortion. And I don't really know what is true. And I just would ask, I don't think the district attorney has committed to actually a formal investigation, but the town can elect or, find a third-party investigator for the claims that were specifically outlined in the whistleblower report. And I think that would help restore public trust. I have no idea what to believe. I have my own personal experience with Jason, like many of you do, and was incredibly impressed. I stood up here like a month and a half ago attesting to that fact. I think having a process to really daylight what is true, and I just found it very interesting just about the comment about the failed severance discussion. So, yeah.
It's like, I've got a question about the town center area plan. If I read it correctly, we haven't had an update from them since last year, since December meeting. And they had made some promises to us that they would involve the public more, do some surveys. I feel like I've been disappointed by the process and also kind of gobsmacked by the $1 million price tag that they put on this. And I also, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the only deliverable that we have for the housing element is to do a town center area plan. I don't think we have to do anything else. So I feel like we've overspent on that. And also looking at the notes from those meetings, I see more discussion about gathering places than I do about actually identifying different types of housing in town center.
Okay, thank you. Kristen New, we're going back to you.
Thank you very much. My comment is actually on advocating for a version of the TCAP, but for Four Corners, which is up at the highways 84 and 35 junction. I realize that this is on the fringe of Woodside. It's right on the border, but this is a very important place, not just for Woodsiders, but for people all over. And it is an important place for Woodsiders to recreate, even though there's not a lot of us who live up here. But there, as you are well aware, there was a very tragic accident last year of a cyclist. There have been numerous incidents, not some of them fatal, traffic incidents. It is a busy place. It has equestrians. It has hikers. It has bicyclists. It has motorcyclists. It has car drivers, not just normal commuters, but lots of people working in the areas with big chipper trucks. And we have sports car enthusiasts, mostly on the weekend. It's a very busy place. It is something that the town really should consider taking a more active part in and engaging not just the citizens who live up here, but all the citizens of Woodside because of the recreation that this area offers and this important corridor. So I would urge the town council to consider creating, yes, there is a TCAP committee, but there should be a committee for Four Corners as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I'm confused. I see a hand up, but I don't see a hand up. Do we have a hand up? Kendra, did you want to talk again?
Yes, thank you. I actually had a follow-up question on a comment. Okay, so my question follows the comment about the 3 acres that's directly next to the Woodside School, because my question is, it was said that perhaps the better place to address that to would be the school itself. That seems like it addresses a bunch of the issues that a lot of us, including myself, had, which is it's the center of town, it's close to amenities, it addresses perhaps the population we're actually trying to target, it answers some of the housing element issues, it's not on the north side, etc. I won't go on. But my question is this, if, say, the school town, would that still qualify towards, the town's numbers?
Yeah, Sage, you want to take that?
There's a couple different things to look at. Whenever housing permits get issued, they count towards the housing numbers. There's certain target sites, certain target programs to be met in the housing element cycle. Should the town look for other alternatives, it would be something that have to open up the housing element to determine if they're going to make changes to those particular goals. Something else in addition to those goals occurs, that may occur. It's totally fine. It would still be counted. It's just a matter of still carrying out the goals and targets that are in the housing element.
All over it like they would if they had bought it.
Yes, it would have to be rezoned.
Yeah, we've proven that can happen.
You can make wildlife multifamily.
Okay. I think they don't know, they're still talking. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we're going to call this at 10 p.m. And thank you, everyone.